Would you please remain standing for prayers by the Rabbi Aaron Goldstein?
In ancient Israel, before time, there were always a system, a two-party system. There was one rabbi here and one rabbi there. One would say this and the other would say that. For 2.5 years, the schools of Shammai and Hillel remained divided. The former said, "It would have been better if humankind had never been created." The latter said, "It is better that humankind was created." After the debate, they reached a consensus. It would have been better that humankind had not been created. Now that we're here, however, let us look at our conduct. Humanity, a strange creation, offered the ability to choose good over bad and to create rather than destroy. Too often, individuals make the negative choice. Today I had the privilege to make new Jews. You see, if somebody chooses to be Jewish, they learn something, they become part of the community, and it is one of the honours of a rabbi to take people to the Beit Din. It's the only time we ever use it. A moment to rubber stamp people as becoming Jewish. We created the possibility for a number of people to create something of beauty and of worth out of their beliefs, their sense of identity, and focus on community, upon others, upon whom their lives in turn depend. Tonight, you have the task of creating or improving a society and structures for each individual within this borough to do the best they can with the humanity that they have been gifted. We say in our tradition, "May the source of blessing grant you strength." And then, at the end of time, may you rest in peace, knowing that you have been a human being.
Thank you. And if I can ask you to remain standing still, please, for a minute's silence for the late former Councillor Pat Jackson. Thank you very much. Please be seated, and as you do so, as it's a rather sticky evening, should you wish to dispense with jacket, then please feel free. Okay, apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. I have a number of apologies for absence. First, for my voice, which is on the point of giving out, but hopefully you'll hear me. Apologies from councillors Bennett, Burrows, Roy Chamdale, Tubadar, Farley, Higgins, Lackmana, Lewis, Money, Nelson and Smallwood.
Thank you. And we come now to the minutes of the meeting, council meeting held on the 10th of July 2025. Lloyd, over to you, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, before anybody approves the minutes, there's omitted to record the minute silence that took place at the last meeting, so members are asked to approve the minutes subject to that being included.
That agreed? Thank you. We come on now to declarations of interest in matters before us. Apparently not, thank you. And with that, straight on to the Mayor's announcements. Well, I will start by highlighting the first two very successful fundraisers for my charitable trust, the quiz at Morello Lounge and the Battle of Britain Bunker Tour and afternoon tea, which have taken place over the course of the last week. Both were fabulous events, and as ever, my thanks to the mayoral team for making it all possible, and the individuals, groups and businesses who came along and supported the event. I'm most grateful. If you missed out on the quiz, please don't worry, because the next one isn't very far away. It's a Halloween-themed quiz that takes place at Hayes Cricket Club on the 30th of October, and as Councillors Riley and Sullivan, who were both present at the last quiz, will tell you, they're tremendous fun. Over the last few weeks, I've begun to build on relationships with local partners, be they businesses, voluntary sector, health providers, as well as Brunel University, and to make connections of mutual benefit. One of these has been Brunel Happy to Chat charity of student volunteers, which helps tackle loneliness and social isolation among older residents, and they're talking to the Hillingdon Confederation, among others now, over promoting this support more widely. I've previously said volunteers would be a main theme of my mayoral year, and we really don't have to go very far to find them, as we all know. Maybe the great people of the Connections Cafe at St Matthew's Church in Newsley, who I visited recently, or the Age UK Club, who I've seen at one or two of our sheltered housing schemes, or perhaps the wonderful volunteers of the Mount Vernon's Comforts Fund, where I actually met a 99-year-old who, believe it or not, still takes 2 bus journeys to get to hospital to do a shift. These unsung and often unheralded people who don't court publicity or jump onto social media to promote their activity really are the very best of us, and I want to meet and recognise more of our volunteers. So if colleagues are aware of groups or individuals, or perhaps a business which is looking for an opportunity to support the voluntary sector in some way or another, I would be delighted to hear from them. I was also greatly privileged to join the Reverend Andy Thompson and the Hillingdon Interfaith community to launch a campaign to raise awareness of and tackle hate crime. At a time when the general outlook can seem pretty negative, sometimes we can draw positivity and optimism from some of the people we're privileged to represent. With the blessing of her parents, I would like to highlight the great work of 6-year-old Anna Olivia Bickle, who lives in Uxbridge. I dropped into a cake and homemade lemonade sale, which she organised herself in her road, and she raised over £200 for Great Ormond Street Hospital. A great story which the Gazette, I'm sure, will be picking up this month. So well done to Anna Olivia. Finally, on a very much lighter note, I found myself singing an old Frank Sinatra number at the Cedar House Care Home in Harefield in recent weeks. Don't worry, I will not be giving up the day job anytime soon, but it's amazing the things you do in a good cause in this role. Whoever said the mayoralty is not for serious politicians? Thank you very much. And with that, we move straight on to public question time. And I think we're going straight to Mrs. Andrea Scrivens, please, if you would.
Since the announcement on the 30th of May of the plan to close the RAGC, the Council has repeatedly stated that it has no other plans for the site. There is a rumour that the land has been offered for sale. Please, could you confirm or deny this rumour?
Councillor Bianco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mrs. Scrivens, for your question. I can confirm that there are no plans to sell the site, or at least the part of the site that we own, and it has not been offered for sale by us to anyone, and there are no plans whatsoever to do so. I am pleased, therefore, to confirm that it is nothing more than a rumour.
Thank you very much, and we come now to John Scrivens.
Friends of RAGC used the procedures laid down on the council website to nominate the Rural Activities Garden Centre as an asset of community value as specified in the Localism Act of 2011. The statutory 8-week period during which the council is required to make a decision on the nominations expired before the end of August. so the council is in breach of the Localism Act. Why did the council neither process these ACV nominations within the statutory time limit, nor provide us with any reason for this failure?
Thank you. Councillor Bianco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Scrivens. Can I start by apologising on behalf of the council sincerely for the delay in confirming a decision on whether the land at the RAGC is an asset of community value or not. I hope you will appreciate that the timing of this, and it's not an excuse but it is a factor, occurred during what might be described as the summer holidays, and that did not help the speed of our decision making. However, we fully acknowledge that a response to inform you of the delay should have been sent earlier to you than it was. However, the council is working now actively to finalise the decision on this application. The council is keen, as I'm sure you will appreciate, to make sure we make the correct decision based on solid information. This decision is now expected within the next 14 days, at which time I will arrange for you to be informed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bianco. So, next question from Lynn Jackson. I'm not certain Lynn's with us. Apparently not, in which case I will read the question on her behalf. Having paid to have our garden waste collected, can I please ask why bags are being collected from homes where no payment has been made and the bags have no address or green tags on either? Is there a protocol in place to ensure this doesn't happen? If so, are all workers fully appraised of it? Are the council also ensuring that garden waste placed in back bags are being refused? Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Given the interest in this one, I won't exercise my right to send it in writing. I will answer it now. The garden waste collection system is working very effectively. We do have minor delays with the provision of tags to all addresses and certainly to the provision of the 6 tags to all addresses. But the crews have an in-cab system which fully lists all the addresses that have subscribed, and that is what they are using to organise the waste pickups. So we are not collecting from those who haven't paid, and if it is found in black bags, they will collect a contaminated sticker and that will not be collected. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery. We come to a question now from Daniel O'Neill, which I'm going to read on his behalf. The July Cabinet meeting was informed of a, quote, particularly damning, unquote, fire risk assessment, which identified urgent building safety concerns from inadequate fire detection systems at the Union Park estate on Packet Boat Lane. Consequently, Cabinet approved funding for a walking watch at £4,200 per day for 6 weeks, a measure deemed more cost-effective than the alternative of reholding 250 households. Could the Cabinet member please provide an update on the situation, including how our borough came to have 13 residential units on a new development with such safety concerns, what the walking watch entails, how its contract was awarded, what the day-to-day situation is for residents on the estate, the future plan to ensure the buildings are made safe, when that might be and how the cost will be borne. Councillor Bianco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. O'Neill, for your question. Mr. O'Neill, your question is fairly lengthy, and I'm pleased to tell you that my answer is equally so. The situation at Union Park is very concerning, and the Council has acted quickly to protect residents and will continue to do so until we are sure that the development is safe. This is a private development, and so far, the attitude of the freeholder and the management company have frankly left a lot to be desired. I hope that you will appreciate that I am limited in what I can say at this time, as this remains an active enforcement case. Councillor Tuckwell will say more later, but I will seek to answer what I can. So in respect of your first question, how our borough came to have 13 residential units on a new development with such safety concerns. The borough acquired 13 flats at the Union Park estate as new build properties for affordable rent some 7 years ago when the estate was first constructed. These properties were acquired based on building regulations requirements being signed off by a private building control inspector, something that is permitted by law, commissioned by the developer at the time, and came with a building warranty as standard for all new homes. These properties were acquired to provide much needed homes for residents, given the high demand for affordable rented accommodation in the borough. What does the walking watch entail? It's waking, not walking, I should point out. London Borough of Hillingdon, the waking watch entails specially trained individuals being on site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, inspecting the site, including all communal areas for any risk of fire. They provide the necessary alert arrangements in event of a fire. How was the contract awarded? London Borough of Hillingdon worked with Home Group, who themselves own 60 flats in 2 blocks on the estate, to use their reputable waking watch provider, given the short notice involved. The waking watch was and is delivered to the safety standards required by the London Fire Brigade, and that's absolutely vital. What is the day-to-day situation for the residents? In respect of its own block, Hillingdon has proactively assessed the risks and has already undertaken remedial works, including the installation of an upgraded fire safety alarm system, and provided new risk assessments for each tenant, working with the London Fire Brigade. This means that our flats continue to remain safe to live in. All of our tenants have personal emergency evacuation plans, PEEPs, and one tenant who cannot self-evacuate is being supported to decant elsewhere. Future plans to ensure the buildings are made safe. The priority action is to ensure that the enhanced fire safety alarm is installed at pace to ensure that residents can remain living in their homes. It is likely to take up to 10 weeks to complete, depending on the freeholder actively progressing a grant application funding from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. Hillingdon is also pressing the freeholder to confirm their plans to address further concerns of the residents about building safety and maintenance at Union Park. When that might be and how the costs will be borne. As previously stated, the installation of the fire safety alarm system is expected to take up to 10 weeks, depending on the freeholder's progress with grant funding. The wider programme of works and how these will be funded is not clear at this stage. Whilst the Council is not responsible for these building safety works, we are pressing the freeholder to confirm their plans to address the concerns about building safety and maintenance, and we will be seeking repayment of the costs of providing the waking watch from the freeholder, make that clear, from the freeholder whose responsibility it is to pay. As mentioned earlier, Councillor Tutwell will address some further points later, but in conclusion, I would like to add my sincere thanks to our council officers for acting so quickly and decisively to protect our residents and for keeping an ongoing close watch over events on site to ensure their continued safety. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bianco. And we move to a question from Adeban Joko. Thank you.
The protests on Saturday, the 30th of August, have spurred racial hatred both online and on the streets of Hillingdon, with calls for immigrants to be sent back. As a resident of the borough, I am deeply saddened and concerned by the rising levels of racial hatred being experienced here. How can the council reassure residents that it takes hate crime seriously when its own communications appear to be fueling hostility against migrants? I'm especially worried about the impact this environment is having on children and young people. Research shows that racial prejudice can begin from as early as the age of 4. And recent data reported in the Evening Standard shows over 15,000 suspensions last year for racist behaviour in schools, more than doubling since the pandemic, with incidents involving pupils as young as 4. Given this worrying trend, what specific actions will the council take both to challenge racial hatred in our communities and to prevent the normalization of racism among the next generation?
Thank you, Mr. Banjoko. Councillor Edwards, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Banjoko, for your question. Mr. Mayor, the Council rejects the suggestion that its communications are fueling hostility against migrants. Racism is a scourge on society, and it is right to be called out and to be challenged wherever it exists. But the call for immigrants who have entered this country illegally to be, using Mr. Banjoko's words, to be sent back is not itself racist. It is the explicit aim of government, as established by the Illegal Migration Act of 2023, to detain those who arrive through irregular routes and promptly remove them either to their home country or to a safe third country. The protest to which Mr. Banjoko refers arose from growing public concern at the failure of government to deliver on that aim and to secure our borders. It was also an expression of anger by those who believe that illegal immigrants, typically single young men, are treated more favourably by the state than they and their families are, and the continued housing of illegal immigrants in hotels rather than in detention centres fuels that belief. The issue of asylum hotels is more acute in Hillingdon than elsewhere, owing to the exceptionally high number of asylum seekers being accommodated here. And that burden is not being shared throughout the borough, but it is concentrated in just 4 of our 21 wards. It is placing a strain on public services that the Home Office presently refuses to recognise nor pay for, and it is testing the tolerance of local residents. As happened on the 30th of August, the protest to which Mr. Banjoko referred, outside bodies, extremists and racists hijacked the resident-led peaceful process, and it is those extremists that must be the focus of our condemnation, not our local residents who were peacefully expressing their right of protest to bring about change. I have been meeting with the police about the demonstrations, not only to ensure the appropriate and robust policing of the actual events, but also to provide ongoing reassurance to residents and visitors in the area. I do recognise that the flying of the English flag, the Cross of St George, does impact people differently because of its association with thuggery and xenophobia. But that doesn't make the flag itself a symbol of racism. Now is the time for our country's flag to be reclaimed from the extremists and racists, and for it to be a symbol of pride of all people of England, in the same way that the saltire is to the Scots and the Red Dragon to the Welsh. The Council works closely with the police, community organisations and partners to monitor community tensions. Hate crime is a specific focus of the Safer Hillingdon Partnership, with the objective of raising awareness of the harm it causes, promoting inclusivity and respect, as well as identifying and prosecuting offenders. We continue to support the Hillingdon Interfaith Network and participate in Hate Crime Awareness Week to encourage understanding and reporting of incidents. Schools and colleges also play an important role, and the Council provides resources and training to help staff challenge harmful ideologies, promote positive cultural relationships, and foster an inclusive ethos. I thank Mr. Banjoko once again for his question.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. And with that, we move on to agenda item 6, report of the Head of Democratic Services, and I call once again Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll leave my jacket buttoned up. This report is in 2 parts. The first one advises Council of the single urgent decision that was taken since we last met. The decision relates to the Beck Theatre concerning interim payments, lease and capital works to be done. The reason for the urgency was to ensure the continued operation of the theatre. The second matter is a minor amendment to the cabinet portfolios and the movement of responsibilities for fleet management from the finance and transformation portfolio to the planning, housing and growth portfolio, thereby making best use of the expertise and experience of the cabinet member for that said portfolio. I move both recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Is that seconded?
And I second and reserve my right.
Any other speakers? Apparently not. Councillor Bianco, did you want to add anything? Okay, is that agreed? Thank you. So on to agenda item 7. The issuance of recommendations under section 24, schedule 7 in brackets 2 of the Local Audit and Accountability Act 2014. And I'll come once again to Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the 24th of July 2025, the Council's external auditors issued the Council with a value for money update and recommendations under section 24 of the Local Audit and Accountability Act 2014. The purpose of the report at item 7 is to advise members of the auditor's concerns, and the law requires that the Council considers that section 24 report and determine whether the recommendations are accepted and what, if any, actions are to be taken in response to those recommendations. The auditor's recommendations are at paragraph 10 of the report of the Head of Democratic Services and Director of Finance. The issuance of a section 24 notice is relatively rare, but the Audit Committee on the 28th of August heard from the auditors that they are becoming more frequent. That fact does not detract from the importance of the notice nor the seriousness with which the Council must take its recommendations. This administration accepts the auditor's recommendations, and this is given effect at the recommendation of paragraph 4A of the officer's report. Furthermore, this administration accepts that action is required to address the auditor's recommendations. The action required is set out in the Council's Finance Modernisation Programme and the Governance Renew Implementation Programme, both of which precede the issuance of the Section 24 notice. Both programmes have been considered by our independently chaired Audit Committee on 2 occasions to date and will next be reviewed by that committee in November. It is on that basis that officers make the recommendation at 4B. But action alone is not sufficient, it must be action at pace. At the last Audit Committee meeting on the 28th of August, the independent chair challenged officers about the pace of implementation, but was assured that on balance it was being delivered at the optimum pace without undermining day-to-day financial management or the budget build process for next year. This administration has confidence in the Audit Committee to ensure that the Financial Modernisation Programme and the Governance Review Implementation Programme are delivered on time and that they fully resolve the recommendations made in Section 24 notice. This gives rise to the third and final recommendation by officers at 4C. I therefore move all 3 recommendations at paragraph 4. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. And is that seconded?
Mr. Mayor, I second and reserve my right to speak at the end.
Very well. And any other speakers? Councillor Mathers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to move an amendment to item 7 because the current recommendations, whilst well intended, do not reflect the urgency of the situation we are in. The Section 24 report from Ernst & Young is not just a warning, it's a red flag. It confirms that the Council's financial governance has failed and that without immediate and sustained action, we risk further deterioration and external intervention. Let me quote directly from recommendation 7 of the report. We recommend that the Council continues at pace with development and implementation of its financial modernisation programme, as well as wider governance review improvement plan and ensures that the scope of these programmes addresses all of the weaknesses in the current arrangements highlighted by various internal and external reviews the Council has received. At pace, Mr Mayor. At pace is the key phrase, and yet the current recommendation gives up to 12 months to report back. This is not pace, this is delay. The amendment does not reject the officer's recommendation, it strengthens them. It calls for immediate revision of the Financial Modernisation Programme and the Governance Review Improvement Plan to ensure that they are robust enough to address the full scope of the weaknesses identified with the urgency required. Regular reporting, not just annually, but at every council meeting between now and February's budget setting session. And a final report no later than 6 months, not 12, with flexibility to report earlier if needed. To meet these recommendations, we must have urgency, accountability and transparency. And this is about restoring public trust. It's about showing our residents, our staff and the government that the elected members of this council take the uncommon occurrence of a Section 24 notice seriously. The Audit Committee has shown concern at the lack of pace reported. Mr Mayor, the Cabinet should have never allowed the recommendations to be brought before us to give the impression of a lack of urgency. The recommendation should not give the perception that the final Section 24 recommendation regarding pace is less important. This Council needs to shift the culture of business as usual to robust actions. We must be able to have confidence in setting a balanced budget next year. Sadly, a number of us in this chamber, in objecting to this budget, were proven right. This must not be repeated. Elected members cannot be put in a position again at budget time. We are legally responsible. There can be no drift, there can be no wait. So I urge all colleagues here tonight to support this amendment. Let's match the seriousness of the auditor's findings with equal seriousness for urgent action, and let's do it now. I move this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Mathers. Is that seconded?
Thank you. I would second the motion, the amendment, and reserve my right to speak.
That being the case, we now have an amendment that's been proposed and seconded, so we're now debating the amendment that's been put forward. So, speakers on the amendment, please. Who have we got, Lloyd? Councillor Tony Burns, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm speaking on the amendment. As a member of the Audit Committee, I share Ernst & Young's deep concerns about the slow pace of action and the wider government's failures in this council. The internal audit report on directive governance presented in September 2024 was damning. It highlighted poor data quality, weak oversight and insufficient senior capacity, largely due to the focus on council-wide transformation. The head of internal audit concluded that no assurance could be given over internal controls, risk management or governance during 2024-25. Yet despite this, it took nearly 6 months for the Chief Executive to commission the Government's Review Improvement Plan, the GRIP. As you could say, 6 months to get a grip. Even more worrying is the GRIP's progress. In 6 months, only 2 actions are rated green: appointing consultants and taking meeting minutes, basic functions that should never have been in question. This explains the poor data quality and the dire financial position we now face. While GRIP rates most areas as amber, implying progress for some concerns, Ernst & Young clearly disagree. Their Section 24 notice and the 7 statutory recommendations make that clear. Mr Mayor, when external auditors say it's exceptional for a council's internal auditor to give no assurance, we should be alarmed. This is not just about finances, it's about systematic failures in governance that affect the entire organisation. To make matters worse, GRIP references a finance procedures manual that's missing, despite being part of the Constitution. Without it, and with high turnover and low morale, it's no wonder accurate financial information isn't being delivered. This council needs urgent, decisive action, and that starts with tonight. I urge members to support this amendment and demand the pace of change that this crisis demands. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burles. Councillor Douglas Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think there are always, when we've got to look at amendments, two tests that should be met. One is about, does the amendment really add value to the original motion, and is there any credibility behind the thinking of the amendments? Well, on the added value, I think the answer here is no, because we already have processes in place, some of which have been described in the report that accompanies this paper, and which again recognises the importance of the issue that we have before the Council tonight. And has been made before, and just to make sure everyone in this room understands, the actions being taken within GRIP and what have you were already happening before the auditor's report was published. But we have the cabinet system that receives monthly updates on the progress that is being made. We have the audit committee, which is, again has been mentioned, is independently chaired to watch and keep an eye and to ensure that PACE is indeed being put into action. And we also have the select committees, which can monitor the progress on a cycle-by-cycle basis. So I don't think there's a need for this amendment in that respect. But what is, I think, interesting is how the Labour Party in Hillingdon always want to talk this council down across the piece. And they never talk about what all the good services that are continually being provided day in, day out by officers and this administration. You know, the fact that we have outstanding children's services, not many of those in London. We have good social services, not many of those in London. But also the fact that Section 24s are becoming more common. But what is unique to Hillingdon is the fact that we have this massive international airport that puts additional burdens, and we have a government that doesn't recognise the funding consequences, as the leader has already alluded to. Well, and indeed, isn't it interesting, London Councils now recognises that Hillingdon is the most underfunded of all the London boroughs in Hillingdon. All these are factors leading to where we have got to today. Not on their own, but they are significant factors. And in terms of credibility, Mr. Mayor, I hope that when he gets the opportunity to sum up, Councillor Mavers will admit that if this administration had followed Hillingdon Labour's lead a few years ago and joined up with the community energy schemes of other boroughs that he wanted Hillingdon to join up with, which went absolutely flat and has caused billions of pounds of loss to those councils that did so, it wouldn't be a Section 24 that we would be debating, and it would have been some time ago. It would have been a 114 bankruptcy. So we shouldn't take advice from the Labour group in Hillingdon, because the danger is they actually make Rachel Reeves look good.
Thank you, Councillor Mills. Councillor Mand, please.
Mr. Mayor, I support this amendment, and here's why. This council is now facing a damning Section 24 notice with 7 statutory recommendations from Ernst & Young. Let's be clear. High turnover among senior staff weakens financial management and governance and risks losing momentum on critical projects. In our case, it's worse. We have fragile finances, urgent risks, and a culture that leans far too heavily on the finance team, more than most councils. This is the price of poor leadership, revolving door management, broken systems, and political choices that have driven this borough to the edge of bankruptcy. Let's not kid ourselves. Much of the so-called financial modernisation programme is just cleaning up years of inaccurate reports fed to Cabinet, Council and residents. At the August Audit Committee, Councillor Douglas Mills asked for a breakdown of the 14.1 million in unexplained account movements. Maybe he got it, the rest of us haven't. Transparency, still missing. And this week, the Resident Services Select Committee only saw May's budget monitoring. It's now September. We were promised monthly updates, we've had none. So yes, the financial modernisation plan is obviously going brilliantly. Will next week's committee finally see the P4 monitoring, especially with an 18.3 million overspend hanging over us? Here's the truth. It looks like we were shown false accounts for years. Serious warnings likely existed and weren't shared before the February budget. The FMP will not be done by October, and no one knows how many times Regulation 72 will be used to extend Grant Thornton's £1.7 million contract. Are they now our finance department? Time is running out. This amendment demands urgency because the stakes could not be higher. And if or when the commissioners arrive and the Conservatives refuse to back this call for action, the question will be asked, why did you not act when Ernst & Young told you to?
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Before I come back to Councillor Punger, any other speakers? Apparently not. Okay, so Councillor Punger, you seconded and reserve your right.
Mr. Mayor, the message from the external auditors could not be clearer. They stated, "We are not confident that the Council has a clear understanding of its current financial position or that the pace of improvement is sufficient to address the systemic weaknesses which exist within the Council's financial management and governance. We are also not confident that the urgency of the need to address these systemic weaknesses is fully recognised by all decision makers." Well, Mr. Mayor, neither are we. A Section 24 notice is one of the most serious warnings a council can receive, and yet the recommendations in response suggest a business as usual approach with vague commitments to report back in 12 months' time. The answer from both sides of this chamber should be a resounding and unanimous no, not good enough. Mr. Mayor, we understand this council has already applied for a mid-year exceptional financial support from the Labour government. We anticipated this. That's why we opposed the budget back in February 25. But what did we hear in return? Repeated declarations of how great they were, how they would achieve all the savings targets, and that they would fix a financial mess themselves. We weren't convinced then, and we've been proven right. External auditors at the May 25 Audit Committee made no attempt to hide their frustration, despite all their warnings of urgency and seriousness of our financial situation. The Council's progress has been painfully slow. A snail's pace, and they made that clear. We are now in a do-or-die situation, and yet, at the August 25 Audit Committee meeting, Councillor Douglas Mills described the Section 24 notice as premature. Really? Is he reading the financial reporting? Or does he not understand the Section 24 notice? Mr. Mayor, while Cabinet members will no doubt respond with the usual political posturing, but they have forced this council to borrow because of their disastrous political decisions. The amendment in this motion are not just tweaks, they are vital steps towards restoring the integrity of this authority. We are calling for humility, we are calling for accountability, but above all, we are calling for immediate action. Let's see if the Conservative members truly care about this council and its future, or if they're only interested in protecting themselves.
Thank you, Councillor Punger. Councillor Edwards, would you have a right to reply as a move the motion?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Labour's amendment infers that the Finance Improvement Programme and the Governance Review Implementation Programme are not robust, which we do not accept, and that has not been the conclusion of the Audit Committee, nor the auditors themselves. They have provided us no evidence to substantiate that inference, and so we must conclude that the addition of those words, robustness, are only there for political effect. Labour's amendment presumes that they're better able to determine the optimum pace of implementation of those programmes over and above those with responsibility for its delivery or those monitoring its actual delivery. And may I even add, as I was reminded by Councillor Mathers, even above the auditors themselves, who, let me quote those words again, we recommend that the Council continues at pace, not increases its pace, not reduces its pace, but continues at pace, the pace we have set. They have given no reason for us to accept their presumption other than the importance of the issue at hand. They've not been open with us about the risk officers have identified to the Audit Committee should the pace of implementation undermine day-to-day financial management or the budget build process for next year and beyond. Nor have they identified the additional resource that would be required or how that would be funded. And finally, by their amendment of continually reporting back to Council, Labour expresses no confidence in the independently chaired Audit Committee to ensure the timely implementation of the two programmes and the resolution of the concerns advised to us by our auditors. They may have very good reason not to trust their own members of that committee, but we have confidence in its members overall, and particularly the independent chair. We are also confident they will refer back to Council any concerns that the programmes are not on track. We will oppose the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. And we return then to Councillor Mathers as the mover of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It needs to be made clear that the independent chair of the Audit Committee is concerned about pace. That was his main comment in conclusion of the item at Audit Committee. Councillor Mills, who sits on that committee, doesn't seem to be concerned by the Section 24 report, just like he wasn't concerned that the budget estimates weren't sufficiently robust in order to set a budget this year. This administration is spending 1.7 million on consultants. Surely that gives the capacity and the speed required to have a pace that is meaningful. Full Council in this amendment has an opportunity to correct the Cabinet's shortcomings. We must be committed as a council at all levels to act and demonstrate that this council is able to get itself out of this Conservative-made crisis in a way that doesn't allow past political complacency to rot away at the efforts that officers have committed to undertake. We must have robust accounts in order to avoid a Section 114 bankruptcy notice. Please support this motion. It is more vital than ever, but I have a feeling that my plea will fall on deaf ears. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mathers. Right at this point, we come to the vote on the amendment. So may I ask for those in favour of the amendment, please to show. And those against. That amendment is lost. Before we return to the original motion, I think Lloyd just wants to say something about the use of mics, please.
Yes. We've been notified. Could members just accidentally or otherwise avoid pressing their microphone button when other people are speaking? It takes the camera off whoever's speaking. I'm sure it's accidental, but please just be careful if you've got papers or anything on top of the microphone button. Thank you.
Thank you, Lloyd. So we come back to the original motion, and Councillor Dennis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Section 24 report is an important report, though not a dramatic one. The report expresses the situation as at 16 months ago. The issues it highlights have been known about for around a year. There is nothing in the report that surprised the members of the Audit Committee, and anyone who has watched our last 4 meetings will have seen members asking how, why and what is being done to make sure Hillingdon Council improves its financial management processes. At the end of the 31st of March 2024, the situation regarding the arrangements to manage our finances were red. Today, I believe this has moved to amber. The Council still has much to do, but I am confident of the direction of travel. The Council accepts the 7 recommendations, which mirror the work the Council began several months ago. Though the Governance Review Improvement Plan and the Finance Modernisation through the programme, the Council is already working towards achieving them. The external auditors are concerned about the pace of change, but pace does not just mean fast, and doing things fast is no good if you don't truly understand the things you're doing. Time has been needed to set the right work programmes. The GRIP and the FMP are 2 substantial and coherent programmes aimed to improve processes and culture of the Council when it comes to financial management, to deliver balanced budgets within the broken local government financing model we have no choice but to live in. To do that, the Council had to first truly understand how multiple services are delivered, how these services all fit together to create a single budget process, and what future pressures will probably be, and what can be learnt from others. The 2 programmes are about accuracy and having confidence in financial data, and openness and transparency of decision making. Officers and councillors across the Council should now be making decisions on the same numbers. The responsibility for budget management will no longer be the exclusive responsibility of finance. The Star Chamber process to put together next year's budget has already started. Training is being rolled out to managers and councillors to help them do their roles well. From this month, select committees will be presented with regular updates on finances and spending priorities within each cabinet area, and this will include highlighting where savings have not been made. To conclude, the diagnosis in the Section 24 report was correct. The plans to meet the recommendations appear sound, and the wider work on driving delivery starts now. As Vice Chair of the Audit Committee, I accept that we will report back to Council on the delivery of the plans within 12 months. But when we do this, what we say should not be a surprise, as a successful transformation of our financial processes involves all of us.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis. So before we come to Councillor Goddard, who seconded reserved his right, any other speakers, please? Councillor Goddard, then, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I second the motion. The report has been deemed necessary because of the challenging financial position which now exists. There's no argument for me about the gravity of the situation, but it is necessary to understand its root causes. Hillingdon Council has been underfunded by successive governments for many years. The last financial state settlement, which took place in 2013-14, sought to reduce government revenue grants due to Hillingdon by £4.8 million per annum for an initial period of 3 years. The reality has been that this deduction has continued to the present day and is calculated by officers to have cost the Council £63 million to date. This alone, if corrected, would have created adequate reserves to weather the current storm, as we have suffered increased social care, asylum and housing obligations, escalated employers' national insurance contributions and, of course, cost inflation. In the normal course of events, a fresh financial funding settlement should have taken place with effect from 2019-20, but of course did not happen due to the pandemic. It must be recognised that the cost pressures sustained and the underfunding suffered by Hillingdon are part of a national crisis for all local authorities. The current consultation on the upcoming fair funding settlement and analysis of this by London councils clearly indicates that we can expect to see a highly substantial improvement in our funding level going into 26-7 and beyond. As a matter of policy, this administration has always prioritised providing residents with great value for services that they receive and the council tax costs that they incur. Financial benchmarking clearly indicates that our costs per head of our population compare highly favourably and are lower than those of our peers. We have therefore focused our efforts on cost-saving programmes where these can yield efficiencies without a dilution in our service quality and scope, whilst we await a new financial settlement. The Section 24 report appears within the Auditor's Value for Money report, which was not issued until the 24th of July 2025, notwithstanding the fact that the audit opinion on the 23-24 statutory accounts was signed off on the 27th of March 2025. This makes it abundantly clear that this Section 24 report was not generated as a result of the work carried out by the external auditors, but rather as a reaction to the subsequent financial reports. The recommendations contained within the Section 24 report are identical to the programme of work which has been defined within the Financial Modernisation Programme, which was finalised by the Council in March 2025. This should therefore be viewed as an endorsement of our programme of improvement and thus enables me to agree with the recommendations. I'm therefore pleased to second the motion and its 3 recommendations made by officers. Thank you.
Okay, so now back to Councillor Edwards as the move of the original motion. In which case we come to the vote on the original motion. Can I ask for those in favour to please show? I should ask for those against to be complete. Anyone against? That's unanimous. That's carried. Thank you. And with that, we come on to members' questions. And we're going to start off with one from Councillor McQuarrie to Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can the Cabinet member please provide an update on the progress of managing the high needs budget and how the team are progressing the SEND improvement plan whilst being more financially efficient.
Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Makwana, for your question. Thank you. The education team have worked tirelessly to improve the council's position in managing the high needs block budget, which is part of the dedicated schools grant, the DSG. It funds all elements of provision within a child or a young person's education, health and care plan that is above notional funding. This in-year improvement has come from the alignment with our local area SEND and alternative provision strategy 2023 to 2028. The strategy sets out the vision for SEND in Hillingdon and encompasses SEND improvement areas as well as the safety valve elements. This has been the driving force for change in Hillingdon and has reset our expectations for our area-wide SEND improvement programme. The strategy underpins the priority areas that SEND services and partners work on collaboratively to ensure the right support is provided to children and families at the right time and in the right place. The most significant achievement has been in strengthening early intervention, something that I have spoken about in council many times before. This has benefited children and settings with pre-statutory support and funding routes. It has supported slowing the growth of EHCPs by meeting needs earlier where it can, and has led to a reduction in the number of plans providing cost-effective provision for children with SEND needs. The key EHCP highlights as per the latest published SEND 2 data for 2025 for Hillingdon is the net growth of EHCPs was -1% during 2024, a significant reduction compared to the 7% growth reported in 2023 and the 8% growth recorded in 2022. Every step of the educational health and care needs assessment journey to EHPC, without exceptions, in Hillingdon is above national. Hillingdon has achieved 91% compliance for statutory timelines in 2024, and that compares to 57% which was reported in 2023. Below national for SEND children's absences, persistent absence, authorised and severely absent is also above national rates. Hillingdon has achieved 91% compliance for statutory timelines in 2024 in comparison to 57% reported in 2023. We have below national for SEND children, at the end of the financial year 2024-2025, Hillingdon had 3,521 EHCPs. That is in comparison to 3,441 EHCPs at the end of 2023-2024. This data includes growth in new plans, movers in and ceasing of plans. Therefore, the service has successfully managed to reduce demand of plans by 219 more than originally was projected and anticipated. This has predominantly been due to young people receiving early intervention support, achieving their outcomes, or moving into employment opportunities. The revised mainstream school banding model, which was launched in September 24, and the special school banding model, which was launched this year in April 2025. The new funding model means that the banding frameworks have created a fairer, more transparent, efficient and effective high needs funding scheme, including the allocation and assignment of top-up funding. Hillingdon special schools continue to provide good value for money, with the average cost remaining relatively stable despite the increasing capacity. The DSG deficit, as at the end of March 2025, is £65.7 million. This is an 11% improvement on the forecast position at the commencement of the safety valve programme in 2022-2023. The above work has contributed to putting us in a much stronger financial position for the Council's high needs budget position. The outturn position is better than expected at the end of March 2025. An in-year overspend for the DSG of £15 million is mainly due to costs in the high needs block, which finished the year with an in-year overspend of £14 million. which in comparison at the end of March 2024, the overspend was 28.7 million. The Education and SEND teams are working hard to continue to lower the in-year deficit further this year. At the end of March 2025, average top-up costs, including inflationary pressures, was approximately £12,000, a 31% reduction in the average cost of top-ups compared to the beginning of the safety valve programme in 2022-2023, which was at £18,000. Further, new EHC plans issued in 2024-25 came in on average at £8,000, and this will create an estimated cost savings of £3.4 million. This is due to placing less children in high-cost independent provision and the new banding framework, which I have mentioned earlier. The most significant year-on-year change is attributed to further education placements. Officers have engaged with the local further education institutions and strategically increased capacity at post-16 provision. This has meant that more complex needs can be met in further education rather than specialist post-16 provisions, which tend to be more expensive. At the end of March 2025, the funding paid into independent settings has reduced by 15% when compared to March 2023, with a total cost of £13 million, making up 24% of Department for Education funding allocated to Hillingdon compared to 33% in March 2023. At the start of 22-23, there were over 400 placements in independent settings, costing an average of £49,000 per placement. At the end of 24-25, this had reduced to approximately 263 placements at an average cost of £54,000. The increase in average cost is as a result of only the most complex of needs being met in independent settings, with fewer children and young people now meeting this criterion. In the year to March 2025, the investment in increasing the available local offal in special schools and in specialist resource provisions had grown to £19 million, a 34% increase compared to March 2023. However, this increase supported Hillingdon's strategy of educating children in their local community, wherever possible, by placing more children in maintained special provision rather than high-cost independent placements, which are also generally out of borough, which brings on special educational needs transport costs. Hillingdon does invest in non-statutory funding to support SEND children and young people, and spent £3.8 million in 23-24 and £4.1 million in this year 24-25. Last year. Many councils do not provide non-statutory funding. However, this council does understand the value of what non-statutory SEND funding provides to our schools and the significant impact that will be caused if it was removed. The council remains focused to continue to reduce the high needs block deficit earlier than forecasted. Some of the full impact of savings will be seen from 25-26 onwards due to the lag between the implementation of services and the benefit realisation in cash terms. The break-even in-year financial outlook is stable, evidenced by the team's progress to date and exceeding the set original projections. A revised projection sees the council achieving an in-year balance in 2027-2028. Although significant progress has been made to operate more efficiently whilst meeting the needs of children and young people, the pressure on the high needs block is beyond a council's responsibility alone and is impacted by many other factors which we have discussed in here on many occasions. The current in-year shortfall is entirely driven by continued demand and high cost pressures in high needs placements, which remain significantly underfunded in the DSG allocation from the Department for Education. These pressures are not unique to Hillingdon. The national picture shows local authorities are facing similar challenges: rising demands for specialist provision, increasing in complexity of needs, and increasing reliance on costly independent non-maintained placements are contributing to widespread overspend in the high needs block. Despite efficiency targets and the council's exceptional mitigation efforts, The structural underfunding of high needs funding continues to place significant strain on DSG budgets across the whole country. All of that said, it is important to note that all the work to date to reduce costs against projections has led to a significant decrease in the in-year deficit position, and I would like to thank officers who strive daily to keep our children in education. Thank you to Abby, Catherine, Dominique and Michael Gary and their teams who have spent so many hours and so much time on ensuring that we get a balanced budget in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryan. Councillor McQuarrie, do you have a supplementary?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. In which case, next question from Councillor Bells, please, to Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Chief Finance Officer's Section 25 statement, clause 21 states, Government will be reluctant to provide exceptional financial support mid-year, and therefore were the authority to be in a position where its outgoings were to exceed its income, there is a possibility that a Section 114 notice would need to be issued. With a forecast opening balance of 6.7 million, a 16.4 million in year overspend, and a Section 24 notice by external auditors Ernst & Young, the then fragile balanced budget for 25-26 now looks untenable. What level of exceptional financial support funding from central government does the Cabinet Member for Finance calculate that the Council needs to avoid a Section 114? What will be the cost to Hillingdon taxpayer?
Thank you. Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Bells for the question. The Council is currently in discussions with the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government, and this is being led by our Chief Executive and Section 151 officers. Excuse me. MHCLG has indicated that it sees no need for Hillingdon to file for Section 114. MHCLG has also indicated that, notwithstanding the comments made in the Section 25 report, that a request for EFS will be entertained for 24-25 and for 25-26 if required for Hillingdon. In my opinion, the advice to resist filing for Section 114 is based upon a number of factors which MHCLG perceives as highly positive in the case of Hillingdon, and these are as follows. The positive ratings attributed to our statutory services in recent times, in particular adult social care, children's social care and housing. The results of benchmarking of our per capita costs of service delivery against our peers, which indicate favourably and suggest effective delivery and strong financial management. Our comparatively low level of budget deficit, notwithstanding the material levels of grant underfunding clearly sustained by Hillingdon, as illustrated by the recently published consultation on fair funding for local authorities, which strongly indicates the need for a material increase in funding from 26-27 onwards. The extent of the reforms which Hillingdon is introducing in terms of digital technology, data and business intelligence. These reforms extend beyond the scope of the Finance Modernisation Programme and are already starting to support our officers in making informed decisions. These reforms will not only reduce our cost base, but they will also play a significant part in improving the financial viability and sustainability of our council going forward. The fact that Hillingdon has not resorted to the speculative and often costly get-rich-quick investment programmes which have brought so many councils to their knees. And of course, finally, the great value for money which Hillingdon delivers to its residents from a low council tax base. Mr Mayor, it's important to recognise that EFS can be granted in three different ways. Firstly, by the provision of additional government grants. Secondly, as an accounting adjustment, which reclassifies revenue expenditure as a capital item and has the effect of increasing reserves. And I must emphasise that this does not involve any incoming cash or indeed outgoing cash. Thirdly, by granting of permission for councils to increase council tax by a rate which is in excess of the normal referendum limit. Now, I must make it absolutely clear that Hillingdon has not sought to go for an additional increase in council tax. I regret that I'm unable to provide the requested indication of the level of EFS capitalisation which is being sought for 24-25. This has been actively considered by me, and I'm in agreement with officers as to the quantum of this request. But to make public disclosure of it at this time, while MHCLG are considering our request, would be highly inappropriate and might prejudice those negotiations. What I will say is that we expect the minimum EFS requirement to cover the projected General Fund reserve deficit and to address the adequacy of reserves for any future potential pressures. We will also therefore assess future financial sustainability in the lights of the Fair Funding Review and the phasing in of any increase in funding which will improve the Council's position. There are further discussions with MHCLG and the Home Office for grant funding to offset the impact of additional burdens, particularly from the Home Office's asylum dispersal programme, where Hillingdon is supporting a level of asylum seekers above the planned level under the dispersal programme. But the outcome of these discussions has not yet been decided. There will not be a cash cost, which falls upon local residents, as a result of the implementation of an EFS capitalisation direction. And as I've already said, this is an accounting adjustment. I will, of course, be very happy to disclose the EFS capitalisation and grants positions to members once this has been agreed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Bowles?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. While this administration is grappling with the reality of a 18.3 million overspend, the Section 24 notice and the looming threat of a Section 114, can the administration explain why they have failed to offer any credible solutions, take any responsibility for decisions that contributed to this financial cliff edge, or even acknowledge the scale of the crisis? Is their silence a strategy, or simply an admission that they are unfit to lead Hillingdon through a financial recovery?
Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Bowles, for the question. As I've already made clear, the problems here are an end product of the lack of funding which we are receiving. And to be absolutely clear, this has emerged from a succession of governments, not just the current one. Let me make that clear. In those circumstances, it would be very difficult for us to do anything else other than drive down our operating costs as far as we possibly can. The other observations that Councillor Bowles made, I do not recognise, particularly as we have been quite transparent and open in terms of the gravity of the situation and the challenges which this Council has faced. I have to say, however, I do look forward with optimism, given the receptive attitude that MHCLG is taking towards our discussions, and also the positivity that is emerging from the upcoming funding review. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Thank you. Question from Councillor Banerjee to Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There has been much comment in the national media about the indebtedness of councils and the amount of residents' council tax used to pay the interest on the debt. Would the Cabinet member please tell me what is our current level of borrowing and how we compare with other councils?
Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Banerjee, for your question. According to published government figures for 25-26 quarter one, in other words, as at the 30th of June 2025, the 20 outer London boroughs, which are the most comparable to Hillingdon's circumstances, have aggregate borrowings of £13.9 billion, with the heaviest level of borrowing by a single council sitting at £1.5 billion. The average level of borrowing per council in Outer London is £697 million, whilst Hillingdon's level of borrowing is below this at £535 million, and this places us at the bottom of the third quartile of Outer London boroughs. And this is largely attributable to our control of capital programmes and our effectiveness in securing grant funding for our capital projects. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Have a supplementary, Councillor Banerjee?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I do. Thank you. A recent article in the Times highlighted that nationally, £1 in every £5 collected, another 20% of receipts from council tax, are being applied by councils nationally to the cost of debt service. Can the Cabinet member please comment the position that Hillingdon finds itself in this respect? Thank you.
Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you again, Councillor Banerjee. There's a clear picture of local authorities suffering underfunding from national governments over the years. And this has left many councils with very much larger budget gaps than Hillingdon, which have required very extensive cash flow funding. Across the last 6 years, 9 London boroughs have sought exceptional financial support, and the total of these requests has amounted to £989 million, almost £1 billion. Furthermore, a number of councils, again unlike Hillingdon, have suffered from failed financial investment projects, which have further increased the cash requirements. In contrast to this reported national position, Hillingdon's reported spend on debt service is 29 pence per £5 of council tax. In other words, that's 5.9%, as opposed to the reported number by the Times nationally of 20% of council tax raised. And this is due not only to our low level of borrowing, but also because of our low effective interest rates, which have been conditioned by long-term facilities, which have been secured at advantageous interest rates. And this is yet another example of how our sound financial management has worked in our favour. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Question from Councillor Singh to Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The budget report agreed by Cabinet in July 2025 points the finger at the previous Section 151 officer for not remanding the situation. So, will the Cabinet member now be seeking to provide an independent report from the East End Young on the reported actual saving against target for the past 15 years, so that this council has a clear picture on the state of the council finances? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is going to get a bit boring, I'm afraid. Constant dialogue, but let's continue. And thank you, Councillor Singh, for your question. The auditors do indeed review and report on savings delivery as part of their annual value for money statement. There's therefore nothing to be gained from going back over the past 15 years, as this provides no assurance over the current financial position of the Council. Therefore, an independent report will not be sought on this specific matter. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Singh, have your supplementary.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. In what way is pointing the finger at Section 151 officers for the council political decision and mistakes a good way to treat our officers who are only trying to keep the Titanic afloat?
Would you mind, Councillor Singh, please? Could you?
Yeah, sorry. Yes, sir. In what way is pointing the fingers at Section 151 officers for the council's political decisions and mistakes a good way to treat our officers who are only trying to keep the Titanic afloat?
Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I got the question that time. Certainly, there is no intention on my part to point the finger at anybody amongst our officer team. I view the present situation as very much a collective endeavour between Cabinet members and our officer team, in who I have a great deal of confidence. I therefore refute any suggestion that there was any finger pointing going on here. What I will say on the subject of savings, if I may, is that over the past 5-year period, if you follow that through to the end of the current financial year, we will have generated £87 million worth of savings, which has actually been a massive contribution to addressing the current funding shortfalls. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We come now to a question from Councillor Bigius to Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Home Office told the Court of Appeal that the rights of people who are in this country illegally outweighed the concerns of British citizens. Does the leader agree with the Home Secretary, and will this approach determine the actions of this council?
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Bridges, for your question. And it wouldn't surprise you or this chamber that I emphatically do not agree with the former Home Secretary or the submission made by the Home Office to the Appeal Court that the rights of illegal asylum seekers trump the concerns of local people. And it is absolutely no surprise to me that those comments caused widespread anger. When pressed by Trevor Phillips on Sky News, the Education Secretary response backed up the Home Office by saying, in effect, it was far from ideal. Those remarks highlight that the Labour government is out of touch with the priorities of ordinary communities. Hillingdon's council's responsibility is clear. Our duty is to the residents of our borough. We are committed to protecting their safety, their well-being, and their access to essential local services, and it is our residents and their concerns that take precedence in our decision-making. The suggestion that the rights of those here illegally could outweigh the legitimate concerns of law-abiding citizens is unacceptable to this administration. Hillingdon Council will not follow that path. We will always put our residents first. It is deeply troubling that Labour have got themselves into this mess. They have failed to secure our borders, to stop the boats, to smash the gangs, and to end the tragic loss of life by those seeking illegal entry into this country. Against the desires of councils and local residents, the government has stubbornly insisted in housing illegal asylum seekers in hotels and HMOs and not in accommodation more suited to their illegal status. The government's policies, their actions and their refusal to meaningfully engage with councils over this crisis has left councils across the country and their residents to cope with the consequences of those policies and to turn to the law for resolution. Council will be concerned that from the 1st of September, the move-on period granted by the Home Office to newly granted refugees evicted from asylum hotels will revert from the 56 days to 28 days for all single adults, excluding those over the age of 65 or with a disability. Let me point out that will be the vast majority of those housed in this borough. This is likely to affect the majority of people within the asylum accommodation in London, and this decision was taken irrespective of the concerns of boroughs, and that there will likely be an increase in rough sleeping, as 28 days is widely considered too short a time period to help someone set up universal credit, find housing in the private rented sector market, and find employment. The 56-day period had been secured earlier following lobbying by London councils and charities, and the decision to revert to the former failed policy is further evidence that the Home Office is not interested in working with councils to manage this crisis. We will act decisively to ensure that national policy does not undermine local services, safety or community cohesion. Residents' voices will be heard and their concerns will guide our actions. Whilst we are respectful of the law and the democratic process, we will never let misplaced national priorities dictate the actions of this council. Thank you, Councillor Bridges, for your question.
Thank you. Have you a supplementary, Councillor Bridges?
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor. Does the leader believe that residents and elected representatives here in Hillingdon are free to express concerns about national immigration policies without the fear of being labelled, silenced or cancelled? And what steps is the council taking to ensure that free speech is protected in our borough?
Councillor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you again, Councillor Bridges, for your supplementary question. Yes, and again, I agree entirely with you. Freedom of speech must be protected, but I trust that you will agree with me that that freedom does not extend to incitement of hate or violence. Nothing will be more damaging to our society and community cohesion than to try and paint reaction to the asylum crisis as racist or to stifle discussion or protest about it. As I said earlier in answer to Mr. Banjoko's question, I meet with our police borough superintendent to ensure public safety, including the wider community, and the safety of those at the asylum hotels, as well as to ensure the appropriate response to public demonstrations. I similarly meet with council officers to ensure we work with the organisers to facilitate peaceful process, to minimise disruption and to reassure the wider community. At the same time, I am also pressing police and officers to identify those who we have reason to believe will use our resident-led protest to foment or commit violence, and I will not hesitate to use civil law to ban them from demonstrations or even the borough if appropriate. We will do all we can to assist our residents to peacefully protest. In our review of the demonstration on the 30th of August, it appears that alcohol may have been a factor in the later disorder. I've therefore agreed with police that at future demonstrations we shall enforce the provision of our public safety protection order to prevent the consumption of alcohol in our streets, and we will be deploying enforcement officers alongside our police colleagues to issue fixed penalty notice to offenders. We will work with the organisers to ensure that this message is circulated in advance of future demonstrations. The unauthorised flying of the flag of this country and our nation is an expression of concern at the failure of the government to grip the problem of illegal migration, and I took the decision that the council should effectively allow this protest by not removing the flags other than those being flown in a way that presents a risk to pedestrians or road users. This includes removing those that obscure our traffic enforcement cameras and our CCTV cameras and ensure public safety in our streets and shopping areas. However, this tolerance does not extend to graffiti, which will be removed and offenders will be pursued. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. So we come to Councillor Sweeting with the question to Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Audit Committee report of the 28th of August 2025, page 60, provides details in the value for money section of the weaknesses highlighted with regards to financial sustainability and quality of council information, with 7 recommendations proposed in the final 2023-24 Auditor's Annual Report. One of which being, and I quote, that the council should seek to balance the school's budget to prevent further growth in its dedicated schools grant deficit, and that the council should also perform scenario planning for how it would manage the impact of the current deficit on its financial position when the current statutory override ends. Although the government's statutory override has now been extended to March 2028, and although the council has taken action to reduce the annual overspend on DSG to 15 million at the end of March 2025, could the Cabinet member provide details of how the deficit of 65.71 million is being addressed, as it is still the highest of any London borough and is increasing? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I thank Councillor Sweeting for her question. There is no doubt about the significance of Hillingdon's DSG deficit, which, as Councillor Sweeting says, currently stands at £65.7 million and is currently, as Councillor Sweeting says, the highest in London. However, this is a national issue driven by structural underfunding of the high needs block, with Hillingdon by no means the highest in the country. That being the total aggregate deficits across all councils at the end of 23-24 was standing at 2.3 billion nationally. I have explained in my previous question the number of issues that we have sought to change and have changed and made a difference. So I would also acknowledge and confirm in Councillor Sweeting's question that she highlighted that the government statutory override has now been extended to March 2028, and therefore this is ring-fenced and does not sit on the council's general budget books. As Councillor Sweeting will know, Mr. Mayor, and she has acknowledged this evening, the council has taken action to reduce the annual overspend of the DSG to £15 million at the end of March 2025. I'll also thank Councillor Sweeting personally tonight, as she's also acknowledged this within the Select Committee, a very strong advocate of scrutinising officers, but completely accepted where we were and did thank officers for that. And for the work that's been done for us to get into the position where we are today. I want to stress that this is a huge achievement, and my thanks goes to Abby Preston, Dominica, Sonal, Maria and Laura, and to our many frontline officers within the SEND team who've made huge strides this year in getting to this point. Now back to the question. It is the Council's priority to continue to reduce the level of in-year deficits to a break-even position, and this is currently on track to reduce this further in the current year. Officers have been involved in a comprehensive action plan, and they continue to purposefully plan to prepare for the end of the statutory override in 2028. The Council has been actively engaged with schools and education providers to improve financial sustainability and continues to work on ways to explore opportunities to reduce for both schools and for the education authorities' costs. The Council has been investing in its SEND offer through the Capital Programme, with several SRPs and designated units now up and running, and which we have seen very positive impacts even over the last year. There are still projects planned to come on board in the next year. This has increased the local choice for families as well as children and young people being educated closer to home. The Council is committed to insurance balanced budgets in future years to prevent further growth in the deficit. However, this is ultimately an issue for national government to address. We believe SEND reforms will be announced in autumn 2025. Government has recognised the challenges and pressures that schools and education authorities are facing. But we are yet to know what those details are. In the meantime, the Council will continue to work close with the Department for Education and its advisors to ensure that this Council remains on track to reduce the DSG deficit wherever we can. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Sweeting.
Thank you. Have you a supplementary, Councillor Sweeting?
Yes, I do. Thank you. And thank you, Cabinet Member. Unfortunately, the DSG deficit across England is now many billions due to the last Conservative government total failure in its SEND policies, leaving the Labour government to pick up the pieces. So I just want to get a handle on why our deficit is so many times higher than the average of all of the other London local authorities. It's the amount extra that we are in deficit that is my concern.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
I may have to come back with some facts to Councillor Sweeting in writing. However, I think Councillor Goddard has made it clear this evening that, and I've made it clear in my initial question to Councillor Makwana, that the complexity of needs, the huge demand that has arisen since pre-COVID and post-COVID has been staggering to most authorities. Our banding structures, which we have now changed, was looking far too favourable. We have done a coordinated action with our schools. We have agreed with the levels of bandings and where they should be now. We are moving forwards with trying to produce more places for schools. We're now in the secondary sector. With regards to what's happened previously, I will try and get some further facts for you, but I think it's very clear this evening we know where the issues have arisen from and where they're coming from, and how we are trying to get our head around and change the landscape for special educational needs education within Hillingdon. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. And the next question is from Councillor Gohill to Councillor Tuckwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can the Cabinet Member provide an update on the practical steps the Council has been taking alongside Government, the London Fire Brigade and the Freeholder to address the building safety issues at Union Park in Cowley and to give residents the reassurance they need?
Councillor Tuckwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Gohill, for your question this evening. Union Park on Packet Boat Lane is a fairly new development of 253 flats spread across 10 blocks, including 13 council homes. Sadly, a recent fire risk assessment revealed serious defects. This involved concerns with balconies and the heating systems for the blocks. The developer is long gone. The works, as Councillor Bianco outlined earlier, were signed off by a private building control, and the freeholder is overseas, which has made progress extremely difficult. When the London Fire Brigade warned that without immediate measures, the whole estate might have to be evacuated, this council stepped in. In July, Cabinet agreed emergency funding for a 24-hour waking watch. This means trained staff are on site night and day, 7 days a week, ready to raise alarm and evacuate residents if needed. This allowed families to stay in their homes rather than face sudden rehousing. For our 13 council homes, we'd already commissioned our own safety assessments, upgraded the alarm systems, and put in place evacuation plans for every tenant. These homes remain safe to live in, but there is one resident who cannot self-evacuate and is being supported into alternative accommodation. The priority is now about installing proper fire alarm systems across the wider estate, which will reduce the reliance on a waking watch. We are working on a virtual daily basis with the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government and the London Fire Brigade to get this moving quickly. The longer term picture is far more complex, where significant works are needed to remedy the original construction failings. Whilst the detail of how and when this is still being worked through, I want to be absolutely crystal clear that this council will not hesitate to use statutory powers available to those responsible to account. That process is already underway. But I would also like to echo Councillor Bianco's earlier sentiment and thank the officers who have been working on a virtual daily basis to protect our residents. I know that it's been an anxious and difficult time for residents, but Hillingdon Council's priority has always been the safety of residents at Union Park, and we will continue to act decisively and keep them informed as we press for a permanent solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Have you a supplementary, Councillor Gohill?
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor. Can the Cabinet member reassure residents at Union Park that the Council will continue to take whatever interim measures are necessary to keep them safe until a permanent fire safety system is in place, and confirm how the Council is holding those responsible to account?
Councillor Duckwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Gohill, for your question. Yes, I can absolutely reassure residents that this council will continue to take whatever interim measures are necessary to keep them safe until a permanent fire alarm system is installed. That has been and will remain our priority. At the same time, we are using statutory powers available to us to ensure those with legal responsibility for the wider estate are held to account. For obvious reasons, I can't go into detail while those processes are live, but again, I want to be clear. Hillingdon Council will not hesitate to act firmly and decisively on behalf of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we come now to a question from Councillor Gill to Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can the Cabinet member please provide clarity on the reasons why there is now an adverse variance of £31.5 million against the outturn of 2024-2025, representing an adverse movement of £20.5 million from month 10, which is made up of the need to write out a negative reserve of £5.5 million. An assessment of the Council's Treasury approach, which has led to an adjustment of £4.5 million, and an evaluation of the bad debt provision policy, which has led to an adverse movement of £4.1 million, along with the £5.1 million of previously reported intervention not crystallising, meaning that reserves at the end of the 2024-2025 financial year are now a meagre £6.7 million, which are deemed inadequate by the Section 151 officer.
Thank you, Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Gill for your question. May I refer Councillor Gill to paragraphs 19 to 32 of Pack B of the papers published for the Cabinet meeting held on the 24th of July 2025, which provides a comprehensive explanation of these items. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gill. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Could the Cabinet member please confirm that we are only not issuing a Section 114 notice because we have gone cap in hand to the Labour government for a bailout? A simple yes or no, please.
Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Gill. As I've already explained, whether you put the prefix Labour or Conservative or anything else for that matter onto this is irrelevant. This is not a bailout. It does not involve us receiving cash in terms of the capitalisation directive. It is an accounting adjustment. And it is a well-trodden path. There are very many local authorities that have gone down this route. As I've already explained, I think at some length, this is due to a shortcoming in the funding arrangements which this council has had to follow. So I do not have any sense of embarrassment or a sense of going on bended knee to seek any sort of bailout. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. And I'll hand over to Lloyd for a minute.
Mr. Mayor, we've reached the 45-minute time limit for questions. In accordance with the Constitution, the remaining questions will receive a written answer within 5 working days of this meeting, and those written answers will be included in the minutes.
And that brings us on to motions to Council, and we're starting with the first from Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am proud to be moving this motion, which underpins and supports the leader of the Council's recent public message about flag flying and flag setting and the use of our flags in this borough, and indeed underpins a number of answers that he has given this evening on similar and related topics. The leader's message attracted an enormous support from residents in Hillingdon and elsewhere as a strong display of leadership, showing the way for our residents and rightly making the point about the wrongful interpretation and use of our flags by some, a point to which I will return later. The displaying of the English flag, the Red Cross of St George on a white background, and the Union flag, which incorporates elements of the nations that make up the United Kingdom, has long been, and we are talking centuries here, the way in which this country and its citizens displays the coming together or support of its people and events. These are banners under which our residents can rightly feel proud and secure. They are symbols of unity, of identity, of culture and of nationhood of this country. It is fitting, Mr. Mayor, that we have had and still have a military commemoration event honouring the brave service personnel who fought in the Battle of Britain, that heroic part of the Second World War where our RAF, a service very close to our hearts in Hillingdon, served so extraordinarily in our fight for freedom. Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few, as our wartime leader put it. Our nation's flags are flown in respect of that event, as they will for national events, sporting and military and others. Some for celebration or mourning, and other events such as those at present, where the good people of this borough want to send a message about the government's poor, failed handling of asylum and illegal immigration. The flying of flags makes a statement. The flying of our flags makes a statement, and properly so. It is the use of such flags to identify what and who we are, what we stand for, and who we stand with. That is a vital and important part of sending out a message of unity and national pride. What they are not, Mr. Mayor, and never should be, in any way at all is to be seen as being taken as racist or allow for extremists on the far right or left, whoever they are, to try to denigrate our flags by association. We will not stand for that. And Mr. Mayor, the good people of this borough must not be insulted by any public figures who decry the use of our flags because they, the people, wish to make a valid point. That is clearly to be understood. There is therefore a powerful message to be sent to government about wholly appropriate, legitimate levels of concern. Flying our national flags is legitimate and is entirely proper on the part of the good people of this borough as a display of concern and unity. Our ability to oppose the appalling attitude by some to our flags can only be countermanded by strong messages from public figures as to the rightfulness of our flag displays. They define what we stand for. Everybody in this chamber ought to support this motion as it stands without qualification, Mr. Mayor. I move.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Is that seconded?
Thank you, Mr.
Councillor
Mayor. I
Tuckwell.
second this motion and reserve my right to speak at the end.
So we moved and seconded. Other speakers? In that case, Councillor Tuckwell, no. Oh, Councillor Mathers, you are in again. Councillor Mathers.
My apologies, Mr. Mayor. I saw the order paper with a number of people noted and didn't realise they weren't speaking. Mr. Mayor, I rise to move an amendment to the original motion, not because I oppose civic pride or our national flags being raised, but because I believe this council must lead with responsibility and not rhetoric. Despite the speech we have just heard from the mover, the motion uses language that is needlessly divisive and agitating. It frames national symbols as a battleground rather than a shared heritage. It implies those who raise concerns about flags or who fear the rise of extremism are somehow unpatriotic. This is not only unfair, it is dangerous and it opposes free speech. Let me be clear, flying the Union Jack or the flag of England or any nation is not an issue. The issue is how we use our platform as a council. Are we here to inflame tensions or bring people together? Our national flag should be a banner on which we bring people together, not raise political purposes. Members moving this motion tonight and the group opposite may be using X, formerly Twitter, to repeat a divisive rhetoric, but that is not the role of the council or its communications. This amendment assists the council to remain politically neutral rather than be drawn into politically motivated clickbait. Hillingdon Labour are not dismissing residents' concerns in a complex national debate, but focusing on the council's statutory duties, which are clear. Under the Equalities Act, we are required to promote good relationships between communities, to reduce hate crime and foster cohesion. This is not optional, it's our legal and moral obligation. And right now, the work is more important than ever, with protests, misinformation and rising tensions around immigration and asylum, which are creating fear, not just amongst new residents, refugees and minorities as mentioned in the motion, but in many. We must not add fuel to the fire. I'm reminded of a recent comment on Newsnight interview by a man known as Big John. He said, "You can't build a country by turning neighbour against neighbour. You build it by making sure everyone feels they belong." He said this in response to a Chinese takeaway in Wales being defaced with the words "go home," a completely unacceptable action. Words such as this by Big John show an approach we need. Not slogans, not scapegoating, but solidarity. Flying a flag is easy. Building a community takes work. It takes listening, empathy and leadership. This amendment is about doing that work. It is about ensuring civic pride. It is somewhere, and this borough is somewhere residents can share and not be divided. So I urge colleagues to support this amendment. Let's show Hillingdon, not just for how proud we are of its past, but of its people, all of them. Thank you. I move the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Mathers. Is that seconded?
Thank Thank you, Mr Mayor. I second and reserve my right to speak at the end.
All right, so we're moved and seconded on the amendment, so we're now looking for speakers on the amendment. So, Councillor Davis first, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I stand to speak against the Labour amendment. The original motion from Councillor Riley is clear, proud and unapologetic. It says what our residents feel. The Union flag, the flag of England, belong to us. They represent freedom, identity and pride in our borough and our nation. Labour's amendment waters this down. By inserting the word appropriate, they cast doubt where there should be certainty. Who decides what is appropriate? That single word undermines the very point of the motion. Our residents don't want hesitation or caveats. They want to see their national flag flown proudly and consistently. The amendment also strips our recognition of an issue that matters deeply to people across our borough. The government's failure to stop illegal entry into this country and the use of local hotels to house asylum seekers. Whether Labour like it or not, these concerns are real. Ignoring them or softening them with language does nothing to address how our residents feel. And let's be clear, our motion already strikes the right balance. It proudly affirms our national flags. It also commits us to supporting community cohesion through Hillingdon Interfaith Network. That is exactly the approach our communities expect. Pride in who we are, while standing side by side with newer communities against hate and intimidation. Our Labour's amendment weakens the balance. It dilutes the pride, waters down the language, and leaves us with a vague, half-hearted statement instead of a confident one. I suspect the motion was also written by someone else. The amendment, I should say. Colleagues, this council has always stood up for civic pride and the values that unite us. Let's not start backtracking now. That job is already taken by Keir Starmer and his cabinet. I urge you to reject the Labour amendment and support Councillor Riley's original motion in full. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Curling.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a highly emotive subject and what should be a symbol of our unity and togetherness and our British values seems to have become a symbol of division, protest and intimidation. If we talk about the cloth, then a flag is a flag. However, the reasons and intent behind the flying of a flag is significant. As a regular visitor to Windsor and Eton, seeing the Union flag and the St George's Cross flying there, it's great. In that context, the flags are being used to celebrate and welcome everyone, just as it is when we have street parties and national celebrations. However, having visited and worked in Northern Ireland in the 1980s and 90s, the various displays of Union flags and Irish tricolours in various towns and streets, together with the painted curbstones and the murals of paramilitaries dressed in black with balaclavas and holding guns next to a Union flag, did not fill me with pride or a sense of the British values that I've been brought up with. Their main purpose was to intimidate their neighbours and provoke paramilitary violence. Whilst there are some people displaying flags in this borough as a display of their pride in our country, they are mostly being used to protest against and intimidate asylum seekers that are currently occupying hotels. One of the first lessons that I learned as a councillor was that as a councillor you represent everyone in your ward and the borough. So when it comes to representing our residents, then we need to represent them all, those that want the flags and those that don't. We're the elected representatives of everyone. Just like an old work colleague of mine who is a British Asian woman who lives in West Drayton, who quite happily celebrated with her neighbours, wearing her Union Jack hat and celebrating with her neighbours at street parties for the late Queen's Jubilee and the King's coronation. But now she feels very threatened and intimidated by the Union flags and St George's crosses on lampposts in her road, very intimidated in her road, with the sight of large groups of masked men putting these flags up and shouting, "Get them out," with anyone who looks like an immigrant being targeted. Mr Mayor, the Hayes Independent Group fully and utterly supports this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curling. Councillor Sweeting.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I confirm that we in this part of the chamber have immense pride in our country's traditions and heritage, and are deeply enmeshed in the work which seeks to bring together our wonderfully diverse communities. We all stand beside our Union flag and all that it represents. So I would like to tell you the story of the two Union flags, photos of which I have there this evening. The real McCoy are outside the Labour Group office. One is from the 1953 coronation of our late beloved Queen. The other was flown high in 1937 at the coronation of her father, George VI. They have graced street parties in my West Drayton ward, bringing communities together, and last appeared at the VE Day commemorations in West Drayton's beautiful Queen Anne building, Southlands. My country's Union flag is a flag which unites us, and many flags are now adorning lampposts and railings in my ward. I salute the right of our people to display our flags, our nation's flag, as I salute the right to peaceful protest, whilst understanding fully the concerns many are feeling at this time. I also applaud the work being done in my ward to bring our diverse communities together. Faith leaders, local charities, schools and volunteers are all playing their part in helping to create a strong, proud and diverse West Drayton. However, West Drayton is now in a spotlight regarding the airport hotels, which have been used in the same way for 4 years, and please remember, was the acclaimed policy of the previous Conservative government, and when numbers in those hotels were higher than they are today. So, Mr Mayor, I conclude by speculating what our dearly beloved Queen, whose death was just 3 years and 3 days ago, would now be thinking. Would she think that patriotism was the sole reason for our nation's flag being flown so widely? Our country and people are too precious not to think of the effect of all our actions are having on others, including our children. So let our mission be, as a council, which strengthens, supports and protects our wonderful diversity under the Union flag. I thank you.
Thank you. Before I come back to Councillor Punja, is there any other speakers?
Councillor Riley, you get a chance to respond after Councillor Punja.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We hadn't forgotten Councillor Riley. Councillor Punja then.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I speak in support of this amendment. I don't know whether Councillor Riley read or understood the interfaith community statement supported by the MP of Uxbridge and South Ruislip, Danny Beales, but clearly in the original motion he, along with his colleagues, have used the statement for political purposes. I would like to read you the reply I received from Hillingdon Interfaith Community in response to Councillor Riley's motion. They say the motion put forward by Councillor Riley would seem to undermine the interfaith community statement. We failed to make the connection with Councillor Riley's proposal for supporting nationalistic pride by waving flags. The flag belongs to all of us, and we hate that it has become weaponised. Our statement says nothing about identity or flags. Rather, it is an appeal for empathy and decency. I welcome this amendment, firstly, to recognise that protests may be unnerving for residents of this country, not just for newly settled residents. And secondly, that it asks for the Council to increase its activities around community cohesion and the reduction of hate crime. Mr Mayor, for some people, like the former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, I will never be seen as English, despite being born here and rooted in the values of this country. My colour of skin identifies me as an immediate foreigner in a country I love, call my home, and which is my birthright. I grew up during a time when I saw similar marches down the streets of Luton, people draped in St George's flags chanting "Packies out." I was repeatedly attacked on my way to school, my shoes stolen, having to walk to school in my socks. My grandfather beaten on a bus for daring to try and get off to avoid clashes. Windows of our home smashed again and again. My mother and I having to hide under the bed to survive another day. So forgive us, Mr Mayor and members of this chamber, if I, like others from all backgrounds, ethnic or not, feel unnerved by the recent organised appearances of flags and protests against asylum seekers, racist graffiti and escalating hate crime. Hillingdon is an amazing, diverse community where our differences are celebrated and our cultures integrated. Like others, I love fish and chips as much as I love a curry. I wave our flags proudly during national occasions such as international football matches, our late Queen's Jubilee or our King's coronation. I'm a proud Brit and citizen of this great country. So I support this amendment in its call for this council to increase its activities around community cohesion and reduction of hate crime. And the reduction of hate crime, and I hope this council will see that this amendment honours all of the residents of this council serves.
Thank you, Councillor Punger. Councillor Riley, you have the right to reply.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I oppose this amendment. It is weak, it waters down the strength of the original motion, and it misses the point entirely. The point of the original motion is clear from the wording, and what the Labour amendment does is to cause us to end up with something which is a half-hearted statement instead of one that is confident and sends out a strong message. So I ask that everybody oppose this amendment and we move on to the original motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mathers, as a mover of the amendment, back to you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, the Conservatives have chosen to reject an amendment I wrote to bring balance, responsibility and unity through a motion. Let me be clear, this was never about opposing national flags. It was about opposing the divisive language that surrounded them, the language that risked turning symbols of shared heritage into tools of exclusion. We have an opportunity tonight to reaffirm our commitment to civic pride and community cohesion, to reduce race crime. To say to every resident, no matter their background, that they belong here, that they are valued, that their concerns matter. Instead, the Conservatives have doubled down on a narrative that pits neighbour against neighbour, that frames legitimate concerns as unpatriotic and ignores the very real fear felt by many in this borough. They are also ignoring the voices of those who work hard every day to build bridges, like the Hillingdon Interfaith Community, whose recent statement called for calm, compassion and cooperation. It should not be misused. Our amendment would have strengthened our partnership with them. Instead, they want to send a message that symbolism matters more than substance. Let me leave colleagues with a thought. Civic pride is not measured by how many flags we fly. It is measured by how we treat one another. It is measured by whether our streets feel safe. It is measured whether our communities feel heard. Civic pride is measured by whether leadership reflects the values of those flags that they are meant to represent. We may lose the vote tonight, but Hillingdon Labour will not stop speaking up for unity, for inclusion and for kindness of this borough, for a borough that we can all feel proud to call home. Please support this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Mathers. So we're now at the point where we come to the vote on the amendment. So may I ask those in favour of the amendment now to show. Thank you. And those against? So the amendment is lost, and we now move to the original motion. And before I come to Councillor Tuckwell, any other speakers on the original motion, please? Councillor Ahmad Banana, please.
Mr. Mayor, being proud of our national flag should never be controversial. The Union flag and the flag of St. George are powerful symbols of unity, resilience, and shared identity. They remind us of our shared history, the sacrifices of those who came before us, and the values that bind us as one nation. They fly above our schools, our hospitals, our courts, and our parliament. These flags do not belong to one political party, one ethnicity, or one faith. They are not the possession of a select few. They belong to all of us. That is what makes them powerful. That is what makes them British. As a British Muslim of Pakistani heritage, I feel this pride deeply. My faith and heritage are central to who I am, but so too is my Britishness. These are not competing loyalties. They enrich one another. Loving Britain does not mean forgetting where my family came from. Honoring my heritage does not make me less proud to be British. Britain's strength has always come from its diversity, from our ability to adopt, to evolve, and to welcome those who contribute. And Hillingdon is a shining example. Churches, mosques, gurdwaras, temples, synagogues, and community centres, not in competition, but in coexistence. Our differences do not divide us, they enrich us. It is time, Mr. Mayor, we reclaim our flags, not as symbols of division, but as emblems of unity. Too often, national pride has been criticized or misrepresented, but there is nothing extreme in loving your country. On the contrary, there is everything to celebrate. We see this pride when our national teams take to the pitch, when we see it during the Olympics. We see it when our servicemen and women represent us with courage and honor. And we see it right here, Mr. Mayor, in this chamber, when new citizens take the oath of allegiance and we cheer together under those flags. As the first British Muslim mayor of this borough, I have had the privilege of welcoming hundreds of new citizens under this British flag in the name of His Majesty Charles, and I have seen the pride in their eyes as they receive their nationality certificates. That sense of belonging, that inclusion is the essence of modern Britain. I am proud that our leader, Councillor Edwards, leads this with courage and is not afraid to show pride in our flag. And I am pleased to see the Union flag and the flag of St. George displayed across my ward in Cowley, not as statements of division, but as symbols of civic pride and shared identity. That is why I support this motion and the leader's stance to ensure Hillingdon remains united. A united Hillingdon is a strong Hillingdon, proud of its roots, confident in its identity, and hopeful for its future. Let us not shy away from our symbols. Let us not allow them to be misused. Instead, let us embrace them with open hearts and open minds. Together we stand. Together we serve. Together we are British, with pride in our flag, respect for our past, and faith in our future. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, any other speakers on the original motion before we come to Councillor Tuckwell, who seconded and reserves his right? Apparently not, so I'll call Councillor Tuckwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got to follow that very passionate speech, so I'll give it my best. I welcome this motion, which reaffirms Hillingdon's proud tradition of promoting civic pride and celebrating our heritage. I also want to acknowledge the leader's recent statement on flying the Union flag and St George's Cross. These flags represent the history, freedoms and values of our country. They are not racist symbols. Their display is peaceful expression of pride in our nation and its values. Hillingdon residents see them as a source of identity and belonging. As we approach the 85th anniversary of the Battle of Britain, we are reminded of the courage and sacrifice of the few, the Royal Air Force pilots who defended our skies in 1940. And as Councillor Riley recited, Winston Churchill famously said, "Never in the field of human conflict has so much been owed by so many to so few." Mr. Mayor, these words, which I cited in my maiden speech in the House of Commons, remind us of the bravery that safeguard our freedoms and why symbols of national pride, such as our flags, remain important to our shared identity. And of course, that history is part of Hillingdon itself. Our borough is home to the Battle of Britain bunker from where the defence of London was directed, and we remain proud to host RAF Northolt, which continues to serve our nation today. This tradition reminds us why balancing residents' rights with community cohesion is so important. We are also very aware of growing protests over illegal migration and the housing of asylum seekers in local hotels. While residents may express frustration, such demonstrations can be unsettling. So I welcome the Hillingdon Interfaith Network call for compassion and peaceful protest. By maintaining flag displays responsibly, upholding safety and supporting this motion, we show that we can honour our heritage whilst keeping our communities inclusive, united and proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tuckwell. Now we turn to Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, there you have it. My good friend who sits to my left has encapsulated perhaps some of the extraordinary feelings that are engendered as a consequence of our motion. This motion is well meant, Mr. Mayor, very, very well meant indeed, and sets out clearly what the leader's comments were in his recent messages and his messages tonight, and indeed on behalf of all of us, certainly on this side of the chamber, about the flying of flags. The important thing about this motion is that it does highlight the fact that our flags are for all, and we will not, as I said earlier, put up with our flags being denigrated by others. Nobody has any reason to be afraid of our flags because they do belong to us. That's the whole point of this motion. But it also says to good, ordinary, decent folk, if you want to fly our flag for the reasons that you are concerned about, then you can, and we will support you. So I ask everybody, and I note the time, to support this motion and to undertake to go forward with the sentiments that it exposes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. So at this point we come to the vote on the original motion. So may I ask those in favour of the original motion please to show. Thank you. And those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. We will move on at that point. And we come now to the next motion, which is from Councillor Plunger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to move this motion of no confidence in the Leader of the Council, Councillor Ian Edwards, and his Cabinet Member for Finance and Transformation, Councillor Martin Goddard. Their years of financial mismanagement, secretive decisions and wasting away residents' hard-earned council tax have dragged Hillingdon into financial crisis. Tonight, our residents demand accountability, transparency and responsibility. Under their leadership, this council has lost control of its finances, not temporarily, but completely, and no improvement is expected until March 2028. Paragraph 41 of the Section 25 statement from Feb 25 stated, "The Leader and the Finance and Transformation Cabinet Member have assured that they will take the necessary in-year budget decisions to reduce overspends and increase income if needed to avoid an EFS situation." But no, since then, overspend, 18.3 million and rising, 3 chief finance officers and an application to government for EFS just to keep the lights on. 6 months into the 25-26 financial year, and the brutal truth is we do not have enough money to run this council. And we have no reserves to fall back on. Hillingdon, lowest reserves of any borough, bottom of the league. Only borough in London not to have submitted draft accounts for 24-25. Again, bottom of the league. Under control, never. With insufficient funds and insufficient savings, many would say, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, then probably it's Donald. Here we have 2 lame ducks presiding over the monumental collapse of this borough's finances, and already in Section 114 territory. The facts are clear. They don't know how much is in the accounts. Finances disclaimed for 22-23, 23-24, and most likely 24-25. External auditors have no confidence. They don't trust the numbers, and neither should we. The inability to prove opening and closing balances means you've lost control of the public's money. This is not bad luck. This is financial mismanagement on a historic scale. Internal auditors give no assurance over the finances. Their response, refuse external scrutiny, spend 1.7 million on consultants for financial improvements, hope a Labour government will save them. And when asked how this EFS loan will be paid back, no answer. Assets? No clue what they are. Excuses are plenty, blaming send children, asylum seekers and those in temporary accommodation, but not themselves. The crack started long ago, back in 2013-14, when the council welcomed refugees but failed to plan. So they are borrowing from our future to pay for yesterday's mistakes. This borrowing for basic operations, not investment. It's like taking out a mortgage to pay for your weekly shop. Reckless, short-sighted and utterly unsustainable. Recovery for Hillingdon won't be because of Edwards and Goddard. It'll be because a Labour government had to step in with more funding and more support. Compare that to an era of Boris Johnson, nil return. And Steve Tuckwell, nothing. Mr Mayor, local government finances is under pressure everywhere. Austerity took care of that. And while other councils are innovating, this leadership is improvising. Others are collaborating, they are covering up. And while others are planning for the future, this administration is borrowing from it. Under Edwards and Goddard, colleagues behind them blindly back a budget that doesn't even cover the full financial year, the complete depletion of council reserves, a failure to produce basic accounts, a breakdown in trust with external auditors, and more public money thrown down the financial black hole. That is not leadership, that is a liability. Mr Mayor, when a leader and a cabinet member for finance lose the confidence of their council, of their auditors and of their residents, it's time for them to go. I urge every member here tonight, reject this broken leadership, stand up for accountability and stand up for the people of Hillingdon. Thank you.
Just be courteous to refer to councillors as councillor, perhaps. I'll suggest that as something to think about, but we'll move on. Is the motion seconded?
Mr Mayor, I second and reserve my right to speak at the end. Thank you.
Thank you. So, other speakers? Councillor Bianco.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I welcome the chance to respond to Councillor Punja's repetitive and lazy motion on Hillingdon's finances. Across the UK, as we've heard, councils are under unprecedented pressures, but unlike others, this administration has acted decisively, transparently and responsibly to protect vital services. Years of shrinking government grants, inflation and soaring post-pandemic demand added to Councillor Punja's own government's refusal to settle the millions owed to Hillingdon residents for their failed asylum policy is causing unsustainable pressures. Our financial outlook is not an outlier, it's part of a national crisis hitting councils of every political stripe. Yes, auditors have identified some governance weaknesses at a financial systems level. The difference is that this administration has moved quickly, tightening oversight, fixing data and strengthening controls. Far from denial, we have accelerated reforms already in motion. Requesting EFS, which, just let me remind you, is not a loan, is prudent stewardship to safeguard frontline services. Calls for resignation are empty grandstanding. Where Councillor Punja sees merely political opportunity, we see a duty to residents, and both Councillors Edward and Goddard are at the forefront of protecting residents' hard-earned money. Councillor Punja, you should be grateful that they are in place. You should be praising them for a job well done in very difficult conditions and not lambasting them for not doing their jobs. Where others have cut services, we have preserved what matters most: public safety, education and support for the vulnerable, delivering services through transformation and efficiency. This administration has a published plan to deal with the challenges we face. Every audit recommendation is being translated into action. Governance, risk and financial management processes are being modernised in full public view. Councillor Punja and what remains of her Labour group offer only noise and deflection from the damage a Labour mayor and a Labour government is doing to the economy and to Hillingdon residents. She may have had the ability to take out the Labour group leadership, but residents decide who run this council, and they have put their faith in us time and again, and I'm sure they will do so again in 8 months' time. This Conservative administration offers solutions, stability and excellent services. Hillingdon deserves steady hands at the tiller, and Councillors Edwards and Goddard provide just that, and not the cheap politics offered by Councillor Punja. That is what this administration is delivering. We will not be supporting this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Curling.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Hayes Independent Group will not be supporting this motion tonight. To be clear, we consider the current financial position of the Council is due to several factors. Firstly, in the 2010s, the decisions taken then to maintain a 10-year council tax freeze, not to levy the social care precept, and to set fees and charges at 10% lower than neighbouring boroughs, rather than at a level to pay for services, have all had a long-term cumulative effect on the income of this authority. The 14 years of Conservative government resulted in savage cuts to local government funding, which not only cut to the bone, but cut into the bone. And now we have a Labour government that is also causing serious challenges by the rise in national insurance and not sufficiently funding local councils for the responsibilities that they now have. In the opinion of the Hayes Independent Group, this motion has been brought to Council not to help resolve the financial position of the Council and therefore help our residents, but it has been brought to promote the political credentials of the new Labour Group leadership. But it is done so in such a way that it has made it into a personal attack on both the leader of the Council and the Cabinet Member for Finance. We will therefore be abstaining on this motion because whilst we have very little confidence in this administration, we certainly do not have any confidence in the leadership of the Labour Group or this awful Labour government. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Curling. Councillor Gill, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a business and economics teacher, I thought I'd speak in a language the Conservatives claim to understand: business. But looking at Hillingdon's accounts, it's clear they've prepared worse than a student who's just realised their exam is tomorrow morning. Let's start with the basics. Let's call it Revenue Streams 101. Local authorities have 3 of them. Number 1, council tax and business rates. Other councils built up reserves. Here in Hillingdon, they decided a rainy day fund was not necessary. That's like turning up to an exam without a pen and then acting surprised when you fail. Number 2, grants. Starved for years by their friends in government, only when Labour delivered a fair funding review did the leader suddenly hope that the current government would bail them out. Too little, too late. Number 3, fees and charges. Stealth taxes. Residents don't see better services, just higher bills. And the result? Reserves are the lowest of any London borough, down 25% last year, down to £20.3 million, dropping further to £6.7 million. Not even enough to cover the forecast overspend. The DSG deficit stands at £65.7 million, which is 10 times our reserves. If a student handed in accounts like that, my feedback would be, see me at lunchtime. Then there's the 1.7 million to Grant Thornton, the equivalent of 1,163 household council tax. All on a consultancy where Councillor Goddard was once a partner. In the classroom, would call that copying someone else's homework and still failing. This administration has had 4 Section 151 officers in the last 18 months. That's not stability, that's musical chairs. They've been asleep at the wheel, no MOT, no service, no checks, and now the council is stranded on the hard shoulder. Like any credit card, you can borrow, 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 but when the bill comes, someone has to pay it. And it won't be Councillor Goddard or Councillor Edwards, it will be the residents of Hillingdon. Mr. Mayor, if this was coursework, it would be graded at a grade U. And if this was their A-level exams, they wouldn't even make it into university through clearing. The auditors have lost confidence. Residents have lost confidence. Tonight, this council must also lose confidence. It's time for Councillor Edwards and Councillor Goddard to hand in their papers, resign, and let this borough finally start learning from its mistakes, before the only lesson left is bankruptcy.
Thank you. Councillor Corr, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Finance reports can be boring, and I'm told it's good if they're boring, but not the one submitted by Council's independent auditors, Ernst & Young. On every page, there are headlines highlighting this Council's critical financial state. Evidence of incompetence, weakness, failure to take necessary urgent action, failure to even know what funds are in its piggy bank, year on year on year. Still not dramatic enough? Unsurprisingly, they don't find anything surprising in their report because they have closed their eyes to wish away their collective financial ineptitude. If it was job well done, would Ernst & Young have served Section 24 notice? Their comments are damning and must be taken seriously. The 7 recommendations must be addressed urgently. Let me list a few quotes from the report to shine a light on the dark reality of financial mess. 1. Council needs to urgently establish a clear understanding of its current financial position, including the extent to which that position has diverged from the assumptions underpinning the 25-26 budget, which may require immediate action to prevent further depletion of reserves. Yes, that's the budget all Tory councillors voted for. Number 2, the council does not have proper arrangements in place to manage risks to its financial resilience, no proper arrangements to ensure it took properly informed decisions, this being due to poor financial data. Number 3, the continued deterioration of the council's financial standing is of significant concern. The council is rapidly consuming its already depleted reserves. Number 4, the level of savings required during 25-26 at 38.4 million are highly significant in comparison to the available reserves of the council, now at mere 6.7 million, namely 5 times more than the reserves at the start of 25-26 financial year. The financial position of the council is now critical, and it is our view that the council is not compliant with its legal obligation to set a balanced budget. In our view, the inability of the council's internal auditor to offer any assurance over the internal control environment during 24-25 is exceptional. The council itself has identified that there are significant doubts over the budget it has set for 25-26. Yes, the one which all Conservative councillors voted for. So there you have it. There is no confidence in this council's ability to manage its finances. It has massaged the figures for far too long, and Hillingdon residents will be paying for this council's financial incompetence for years to come. I support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Manns.
Mr. Mayor, this motion is about accountability. The facts are clear and they come not from Labour but from the Council's own reports and from our independent auditors. We know that accounting errors stretch back to 2013-2014, only uncovered in the recent balance sheet review. We know that £14.1 million of one-off adjustments had to be forced into last year's accounts, leaving Hillingdon with just £6.7 million of usable reserves, the lowest safety net in London. We know that the school's budget deficit now stands at £65.7 million and rising. We know that the external auditor, Ernst & Young, issued a Section 24 notice with 7 statutory recommendations because this council, under Conservative leadership, has not had proper arrangements in place to secure value for money. And we know the administration has already applied to the Labour government for exceptional financial support, which is a polite way of saying, give us the money. So who's to blame? In July, the budget report to Cabinet blamed previous Section 151 officers and auditors for not rectifying the accounting errors. The leader blames his predecessor. The Cabinet member for Finance has blamed COVID, Ukraine, inflation, Trump. But here is the truth. Hillingdon Conservatives have been in power for over 20 years. Every major financial decision was theirs. Every warning ignored. Every reserve depleted. At the Audit Committee, Councillor Douglas Mills said Labour was looking for smoking guns. Well, Mr. Mayor, we are not hunting for smoking guns. The Conservatives have handed us a fully loaded arsenal, an arsenal of failure, all for it paid for by Hillingdon residents. The auditors have spoken, the accounts are damning, the reserves are gone, services now face cuts. When your house is on fire, you do not leave the people holding the matches in charge of the fire extinguisher. This council must pass this motion of no confidence. On behalf of the residents, I say this clearly. The leader, Councillor Ian Edwards, and the Cabinet Member for Finance, Councillor Martin Goddard, must resign tonight. Hillingdon deserves way better.
Thank you. Councillor Sweeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Councillor Higgins said at the recent Audit Committee meeting, our finances are out everywhere, and so they are. Take the dedicated schools deficit, which has now risen to 65 million. No, sorry, stop press. Schools Forum now reports that the cumulative deficit may be some 89 million by March 2028. So how have we got into this financial mess? Well, at the heart is a political decision made by the previous leader and carried on by this, that the deficit is not our problem, Gov, but the government's. This mantra continued until the deficit became so high that the council had to enter into the safety valve agreement, where both government and council finance part of the deficit, but with strict rules attached. This Conservative council gave a great sigh. The problem has gone away. But it hasn't. It's due to 2 things. Firstly, the council was not reducing the annual huge overspend quickly enough. And secondly, it wanted to use capital, not reserves, not allowed. So the override has stalled and the deficit has ballooned. There was a worrying lack of understanding regarding this issue from the Conservative members of the recent Audit Committee meeting, where comments on the deficit included from Councillor Mills. Budget advice we were given was that the deficit would not be a burden on the council's finances. And what has changed that we now have to account for the deficit? And the deficit is acting as a dead weight. Councillor Higgins seems to be more at sea with comments such as, why is the government reneged on its deal? And why is the government imposing this, which is not our responsibility? And what decision was made after 2018-19 to change policy? It took the chief executive to bring some clarity to the proceedings with a hesitant admission that it was a political decision that the deficit was not the council's problem. Other councils decided to pay off some or all using reserves, but it was a political decision by this Conservative administration not to. So there we have it. This administration did not believe it was its problem when it was. The Labour government might come to the council's rescue, but maybe not, and it will be Hillingdon residents who will pay the price for, without a bailout or something comparable, this council is effectively bankrupt. I support the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Douglas Mills.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think the Labour group have been listening very well tonight to the answers that Councillor Goddard gave, mainly to their questions, because if they had listened to those answers, they would have heard quite clearly the circumstances that have led up to where we are and why the situation has arisen in terms of Section 24. And, Mr. Mayor, I don't think it's at all helpful. In fact, I would say it's irresponsible for members of the Hillingdon Labour Party as councillors to say that we're on the verge of bankruptcy when we're not. And it is not a good message to send to the 2,500 employees who continue to provide, as I mentioned before, top quality services. And indeed, as the Chief Executive sent out on one of his messages, making it quite clear that where we are is not bankruptcy. Now, the reason they're doing, of course, this, Mr. Mayor, is they haven't found the smoking gun to actually be able to blame exactly how we've got here, because they refused to look and listen to the answers that Councillor Goddard has given earlier. They are desperate to get their bandwagon really motoring. And as time goes on, I'm becoming even more grateful to the wise words of Councillor Curling, not only for his contribution tonight, but let me take you back to what he said in July. He said, beware the bandwagon from Hillingdon Labour Party, especially from their front bench and especially from their deputy leader. If it's possibly of getting it moving, she will give it a good push. And that's what she's trying to do tonight. Let me also remind everyone, this is the same Hillingdon Labour Party whose financial advice was for us not to move Uxbridge Library, which would have cost us a lot more money because of the work we did. It's the same Hillingdon Labour Party that said we shouldn't do a deal on the children's services today, where we handed over the keys, improving the service and saving ourselves thousands of pounds. This is the same Hillingdon Labour Party that wants us to buy in flowers and we then sell off at a loss. This is what the Labour Party stand for in Hillingdon. The only bandwagon that's moving, as Councillor Curling knows, is the one from Useley on the chicken run to try and get into Hayes, because she knows she can't face the people of Useley next year and it'll be easier to hide in Hayes. We must reject this motion as nonsense. We carry on with the hard work that we're doing and the circumstances and the dice that have been loaded against us, because we will come through, because Conservatives fundamentally understand good services, value for money, and I think when the next Cabinet report comes about our performance, we will see quality.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Mills. Councillor Edwards, please.
Mr. Mayor, it was merely on a matter of order, in that in a previous speech the Labour group impugned the words of the Chief Executive, who's not able to defend himself or make representation. What he said is recorded on video. It can be reviewed and we will find he has been misquoted. Thank you.
So, again, any other speakers before we come to Councillor Mathers? Doesn't look like it. Councillor Mathers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I second this motion as the Council has a deep-rooted weakness in its leadership, processes and systems. The finance team, as said, has had 4 Section 151 officers in 18 months and is heavily reliant on interims or consultants. Morale is low, communication is poor, and there's a worrying blame culture as they have scapegoated by the officers scapegoated by the administration. The leader of the council, Councillor Ian Edwards, and the cabinet member Martin Goddard have continuously failed. Councillor Martin Goddard, apologies, have continuously failed our borough. They knew the financial crisis was coming long before the Section 24 report exposed it. They've lost control of Hillingdon's finances with accounting errors dating back to 2013. I mentioned this previously in a recommendation to change and strengthen things to change that. They refused. Now external auditors have forced them, kicking and screaming, to beg the Labour government for help. But we warned them and they dismissed it, Mr Mayor. In November 2023, we proposed a motion to lobby government, a Conservative government at the time, for more funding. Councillor Edwards scoffed at Hillingdon Labour, saying that our response, I quote, only response is to beg for more funding, and they had it under control. But here we are. The reality is, Mr Mayor, is they needed that funding, they needed to lobby. Councillor Edwards and Councillor Goddard know the enormous amounts of multi-billion-pound balanced budget sheet movements do one thing. They mask huge overspends and pretend that all is well. This is disastrous. It creates overspends, a budget built on sand, and a Conservative group behind them who blindly follow their cabinet. I wonder, Mr Mayor, how much have they told their backbenchers? Because it seems the whole group has got a false confidence in the finances of this council, as illustrated and boasted by Councillor Doug Mills himself. And previously he said, the difference between Hillingdon Conservatives and Hillingdon Labour on sound financial management is we actually believe in and we're able to deliver week in and week out. Well, if that was the case, why are we begging for an in-year bailout? They are the only group in London, the only council in London to have published their accounts, not even in draft, not have published yet, even in draft their accounts. And tonight the mess has been laid bare. And Mr Mayor, I'm sure secretly that Councillor Doug Mills knows the truth, and he's desperate to support this motion. Doing so will allow Hillingdon residents not to have to pay the price for the poor leadership, and I second this motion for no confidence.
Councillor Punger.
Mr Mayor, what a surprise. Not a single word of accountability. Let me remind this chamber, every councillor here has a legal responsibility towards council's finances. Under the Local Government Act 2000, we are personally accountable for ensuring public funds are used lawfully, efficiently and transparently. So let's not pretend anyone was unaware. Budget after budget, Councillor Edwards and Councillor Goddard brought forward numbers riddled with accounting errors, waved through by cabinet and backbenchers alike, even as they were warned. Zero-based budgeting, discredited by every credible accountant in local government, was spearheaded by Martin from Accounts. Sadly, his education has taken this council into a financial abyss. Mr Mayor, ignorance is not a defence, and negligence is not leadership. So here we have it. The Titanic has hit the iceberg. The Carpathia is on its way. Commissioners, the decks are being scrubbed for their arrival. Councillor Goddard already on his lifeboat. Councillor Edwards scrambling for a life jacket. Councillor Tuckwell lurks behind the scenes waiting for his moment. Councillor Bryan flailing. The statutory override clock is ticking. Councillor Bridges, Davies and Martin already on their own small boats. Councillor Doug Mills, head in hand, knowing this was coming, but only half the group would stand by him. Don't worry, we'll have a recorded vote shortly so he can show his courage or not. And for the rest, EFS will come with strings attached and likely a full investigation that will expose this Conservative administration's decade-long financial mismanagement. Mr Mayor, this administration has failed our residents and each of us has a legal duty to act. We must demand an independent investigation and the immediate resignation of Councillor Edwards and Councillor Goddard. This isn't just a storm, it's a shipwreck, and it's time this chamber showed some courage and leadership.
Right. Well, we now come to the said vote. How many of you are standing for this? We've got the numbers. I'll hand you over to Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Recorded vote has been called for and supported by the requisite number of members, so I will be asking each member in turn if you are voting for motion 9.2 from Councillor Punja, as set out on page 10 of the order paper, against or abstaining. Councillor Abbey. Councillor Ahmad Walana.
Against the motion.
Councillor Banerjee. Councillor Bassett.
Abstaining.
Councillor Batt. Councillor Bianco. Councillor Bridges. Councillor Burles. Councillor Curling. Councillor Davies. Councillor Dennis. Councillor Dott. Councillor Edwards. Councillor Gardner. Councillor Gaelic. Councillor Garg. Councillor Gill. Councillor Goddard. Councillor Gohill. Councillor Hagger. Councillor Islam. Councillor Judge. Councillor Kaur. Councillor Lavery. Councillor Makwana. Councillor Mand. Councillor Martin. Councillor Mathers. Councillor Douglas Mills. Councillor Richard Mills. Councillor Nelson West.
For.
Councillor O'Brien. Councillor Palmer. Councillor Punja. Councillor Riley. Councillor Sansapuri. Councillor Singh. Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Sweeting. Councillor Tuckwell. Madam Deputy Mayor. Mr. Mayor.
Against.
Mr. Mayor, that motion is lost by 23 votes to 14 with 3 abstentions.
Thank you. So we now come on to the next motion on the order paper from Councillor Curling.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The facts are stark. Research consistently shows that adult gaming centres and betting shops are not evenly distributed across our towns and cities. Instead, they're concentrated disproportionately in our most deprived areas. Hayes Town is a perfect example. Already it has more than its fair share of such establishments, and yet we now learn that yet another gaming centre is set to open in the old Barclays Bank building. These businesses do not arrive by accident. They are deliberately targeted at areas where people are more financially vulnerable. They exploit individuals who may already be struggling to make ends meet, and they do so in a way that damages not just individual lives, but whole families and entire communities. At the same time, our high streets are undergoing dramatic change. With the growth in online shopping and the shift away from traditional retail, empty shops are appearing at a worrying rate. That leaves us exposed. Without stronger protections, there's a real risk that gaming centres and betting shops could dominate what remains of our local town centres. We want Hayes Town, and indeed all our local centres, to be vibrant, diverse, welcoming places for residents, families and small businesses. We do not want them lined with neon signs for fixed odds betting terminals and slot machines. Mr. Mayor, members will know that local councils currently have very limited powers in this area. Too often, when residents raise concerns, we are forced to tell them that our hands are tied, that planning laws and gaming regulations simply do not give us the tools to say no. And it's not just us saying this. More than 40 councils representing communities up and down the country from all political persuasions are already working together to demand change. They're calling for urgent gaming reform so that high streets are not hollowed out and dominated by these establishments. This motion is simple. It calls on the Cabinet to consider joining the coalition of councils to add our voice and add the voice of our residents to this growing movement. Because change will only come if we stand together and make the case for stronger protections. This is not about moralising, nor is it about denying adults the freedom to spend their money as they choose. It's about fairness, about protection about protecting the most vulnerable, and about ensuring our high streets remain places of community life rather than places of exploitation. By supporting this motion, we send a clear message that Hayes, and indeed Hillingdon as a whole, has done its bit and more, and it's time for the government to step up and reform regulations and give local councils the powers we need to protect our communities. Mr. Mayor, I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Curling. Is that seconded?
I second and reserve my right.
We're moved and seconded. And Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to rise in support of Councillor Curling's motion this evening. I welcome this motion from the Hayes Independent Party. In my own ward of Charville, residents are already living with this very problem this motion seeks to address. At Kings Hill Shopping Parade, there are 2 betting shops operating on the same small stretch. For what should be a community shopping parade serving families with everyday needs, this is simply disproportionate. It limits choices, changes the character of the area, and reduces the diversity of the shops local people want to see. As Conservatives, we believe in supporting thriving high streets, encouraging enterprise, and giving people pride in their communities. But when gambling outlets cluster in this way, they undermine those very aims. Instead of variety and opportunity, we end up with repetition and decline, driving out the local businesses we should be supporting. To be clear, this is not about banning gambling. Adults who choose to place a bet responsibly should always have that freedom. But when betting shops and gaming centres are allowed to congregate in one area, particularly in communities already facing challenges, is becoming unfair and damaging. It undermines regeneration, strips high streets of balance, and too often preys on the most vulnerable people in our community. The problem is that councils like ours simply don't have the powers to say enough is enough, even when local people can see that the area is already oversaturated and the current regulations tie our hands. That is why action is needed. By joining a coalition of over 40 councils calling for change, we can strengthen our voice and add weight to this cross-party effort. This is not about politics. It is about standing up for our residents, protecting our high streets, ensuring that places like Kings Hill, Hayes Town and the wider Hillingdon community reflect the needs and aspiration of the people who live there. So, Mr. Mayor, I thank Councillor Curling and the Hayes Independent Party for bringing this motion forward. I strongly support it, and I urge colleagues across the chamber to do the same. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner.
Mr. Mayor, slot machines are consistently ranked as one of the most addictive gambling products. Professor Belden Jones, I have done my research, NHS Clinical Advisor on Gambling Harms, is quoted as saying, slot machine venues, particularly those open 24/7, deploy addictive products to keep vulnerable people playing for hours on end against their own interests. Recent findings indicate that funds from the poorest are being channeled into the pockets of the richest. This comes as the NHS is seeing record numbers who have had their lives destroyed by gambling, with 15 clinics now up and running in England. The number of slot machine shops has risen by 7% since 2022, and most of them are open 24 hours a day. In Hayes Town, they've gone from 1, then 2, and now an application for a third is awaiting a hearing by the Licensing Subcommittee. As a long-standing member of the Licensing Committee, I know that the Gaming Act is loaded in favour of granting applications. Any concerns that councillors on the committee may have about crime and antisocial behaviour or the adverse effects on children and young people are easily cast aside by the lawyers who represent the applicants. There can't be any problems as we haven't opened yet, they keep saying. And behind that is the unspoken threat that if you turn them down, they will take the council to the magistrates' court and get the decision overturned. Obviously, this is not just an issue for Hayes or for Hillingdon Borough. As the motion says, some councils are now beginning to call for change in the law so that the interests of residents, vulnerable people and other shopkeepers get a proper hearing. Led initially by Brent Council, there's now a group of 40 local authorities of various political persuasions who are supporting this 6-point plan for change. I think it's time for Hillingdon to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. We come now to Councillor Sansapuri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is a sad reality that adult gaming centres and betting shops are not spread evenly across our town and cities. They are concentrated in a most deprived area, target some of the most vulnerable members of our community. Hayes Town is a clear example. It already hosts a number of these establishments, and now we hear that yet another is due to open in the former Barclay Bank building. That is not regeneration, that is exploitation. With high streets struggling and traditional retail in decline, empty shops are easy target for betting and gaming operators. But the result is not a vibrant local economy. It is a street dominated by flashing lights, shuttered windows, and vulnerable residents being drawn into cycle of debt and addiction. Mr. Mayor, let be clear, it is not about anti-business. It is about standing up for our community. Local councils currently have very few tools to stop the spread of this establishment when the public opposition is overwhelming. That is why more than 40 councils across the country from all political backgrounds are now coming together to demand change. We owe to our residents, especially the young, financially insecure, and those already struggling to say enough is enough. Let's join the coalition, let's call for reform, and let's ensure the High Street reflect needs and hope of our community, not just the interest of gambling industry. Mr. Mayor, I support this motion and urge all members to support this motion as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Coming now to Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Curling for bringing this motion, which I'm happy to support. The challenges of our high streets are well known, and they are in a difficult place for changing shopping habits. That does not mean that some high streets, and Councillor Curling has very eloquently put it, as has Councillor Davis, should become centres for gaming centres, slot machines and betting shops alone. The Licensing Act gives the Licensing Subcommittee very little power to regulate, because if you pass the technical tests, you can have a licence. The fact there are too many or the cumulative effect is something we currently can't control. And that clearly is not in the best interests of the residents of Hillingdon. In terms of planning policy, our planning policies seek to maintain retail uses within the key areas of our high streets, but again, we have limited control over the other types of uses that then operate. And I know the current review of the local plan will see if we can make some small changes which may assist us in denying those applications. But of course that will only apply to new, and obviously that process has got to be completed. The coalition that has come together originally started by Brent, and I note there is a GLA roundtable coming up on this subject, has cross-party support, and I am happy on behalf of the administration to say that we will be willing to join in that, and I hope that all members of this chamber will be able to vote for that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Okay. Councillor Bassett, you seconded and reserve your right.
I reserve my right.
In that case, Councillor Curling.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the interest of time, I have nothing further to say, apart from it is nice to get to the end of a rather turbulent council meeting with some unity.
Mr Mayor, at this point I should inform members that we've reached 10:30. At this point, a number of things can happen. The Mayor would invite a member to move a motion that we continue beyond 10:30 and to specify what business should be dealt with and in what manner, in what order. And as far as I'm aware, we've got a vote on this motion and Councillor Gaelick's motion. If no such motion is moved, then that business will fall. Or you could move Councillor Gaelick's motion to the next meeting. So we need to invite a member to
Councillor Richard Mills.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, in interest of time, propose that we move to the vote on 9.1 and 9.3 be deferred to the next full council meeting.
Very well.
That needs seconding.
That needs seconding, please.
Mr Mayor, I second that motion.
Okay.
Show of hands.
And is that agreed? Agreed.
Okay, so then the vote
Okay.
on Councillor
So
Curling's
we now return to the vote on Councillor Curling's motion. Those in favour?
That's unanimous.
That's unanimous and carried. Thank you very much. And with that, that concludes the meeting. Thank you.